Can everybody please take your seats? I haven't said my name.
There's so many people different when you're not. Happy New Year. Oh, where are you the last couple meetings? You missed you.
You know what? I wasn't feeling too hot, but I'm back.
You're back good. Okay, good. Okay, everybody, let's take our seats. Let's get this going.
You have notes on loading?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. Welcome back. Happy New Year.
Lisa, I want to say hello. I'm here for the Water Authority advisory.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Right. Okay, let's try this again. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good morning again. Happy New Year. This is the January 10th Board of Directors meeting. It is now called to order. First, I'd like to ask our interpreters to explain how to access interpretation. Please go ahead.
Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples, who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Comayay Digueño, the Luceño, the Copeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the Sandag community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the justices of the past. Before we go forward, I'd also like to express our heartfelt concern for the neighborhoods in Los Angeles that have been just devastated by the fires that we have seen. Our thoughts are with all the families who have lost so much, also with our colleagues at SCAG and all those others impacted in this difficult time. As neighbors and partners in the region, we've been in touch with our counterparts in LA to offer any support or resources we can provide, collaboration and resilience to define our region, and we stand ready to help however we can. If we could now just take a moment to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Francesca, can you please confirm a quorum?
Thank you, Vice Chair. We do have a quorum this morning with only the County of San Diego absent.
Okay. All right. Before we begin today, I want to introduce Lali Enrique, who is serving as our external counsel today while Alfred is out of office on holiday. Lali is a partner with Nossaman and serves as Assistant City Attorney for the cities of Beverly Hills and Manhattan Beach. Welcome, Lali. Glad to have you here. Now, as the first order of business today, the board is asked to conduct elections for the SANDAG board officers for 2025 and 2026. Statements of interest for the board leadership positions from some board members are included in today's agenda packet, but any primary board member is eligible for consideration. As a preliminary matter, I'd like to ask Lolly to walk us through the process for today's elections.
Morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Lolly Enriquez from Nossaman. So in order to be eligible for one of the 3 leadership positions, you just have to be a primary member of the board, regardless of whether you submitted a statement of interest or not. So a nomination for a candidate for a leadership position will be considered a motion, which is, as with any other motion, it requires a second. That nomination, as with any other motion, will there'll be an opportunity for discussion followed by a vote for that candidate. Each of the 3 positions will be voted upon separately. In terms of voting, per state law, the chair and the vice chair will be selected. Well, the vote will be a weighted vote. For the second vice chair, it'll be pursuant to SANDAG's normal voting procedures, including a tally vote. The term of office for each of the leadership positions is for a 2-year term through end of calendar year 2026. And that term will be effective immediately. So upon election of the new chair, we'll switch chairs and the new chair will conduct the remaining election. In terms of conflicts of interest pursuant to FPPC regulations, candidates may remain in the room and vote for themselves. Should they choose to do so, SANDAG will file the appropriate FPP Form 806, noting the stipends that those leadership positions do receive. And for disclosure purposes, it is noted that each of these 3 leadership positions receives a stipend. So that concludes the procedures for the leadership election. I'll turn it back to Chair Huebner or Mayor Huebner, who will oversee the election of the new chair.
Thank you, Lolly. Okay, initially we will consider the chair position followed by vice chair and then second vice chair. As explained, a nomination for leadership positions takes the form of a motion and a second. First, I'd like to open the floor for public comments. Francesca?
Thank you. We'll start with Alan C. If you'd like to step up to the podium, and Alan will be followed by Chris Roberts.
Concerning who you're going to select for chair, keep in mind what's happened these last few years. The multiple issues with spending and money loss, i.e. 125, the largest headache. And now you guys are talking about toll roads in every lane. The toll on Coronado Bridge is back. You look it up, 2025 regional plan actually calls for removing lanes, convert to toll roads. And yet, we're promised by this one, Transnet, to expand freeways, not managed lanes or toll roads. Your bike lanes, taking away road lanes. Balboa Hospital took away a lane. I was late for surgery, waiting there in emergency surgery because you put stupid bike lanes going to the Balboa Hospital. What about all the veterans? What about your communities? How many bike lanes removed our road lanes, i.e. you claimed Transnet to expand freeways, and you guys lied. That's why you failed on Measure G, failed on that tax, because the people have had enough. Let's get a new board that actually get vision and go by what the people requested, demanded, roads. I yield back.
Our next speaker will be Chris Roberts, followed by Rita Clement.
Hi, my name is Chris Roberts. I live in Carmel Valley. I volunteer for San Diego 350, a climate justice and advocacy organization. We know that climate change results in increased frequency of severe wildfires and coastal flooding, and we're seeing these effects right now with the horrendous fires burning near LA today and in the catastrophic flooding in Barrio Logan a year ago. Transportation is the leading contributor of greenhouse gas emissions in Southern California, and automobiles account for about 1/3 of CO2 emissions. San Diego 350 will be advocating for a 2025 regional plan that will meet our legally mandated carbon emission targets. Effective leadership of the SANDAG Board of Directors is essential, and based on their personal statements, we feel that Mayor Lisa Huebner, Joe LaCava, and John Minto are the best candidates for the SANDAG Board Chair and first and second Vice Chair positions respectfully. Thank you all very much.
Our next speaker will be Rita Clement, and Rita will be followed by Cesar Javier.
Good morning, SANDAG staff and SANDAG Board of Directors. My name is Rita Clement, and I'm a volunteer with San Diego 350. We believe that SANDAG must pursue the actions and create an efficient and accessible transit and MTS plan. Clean air and water benefits all residents of the County of San Diego. Affordable housing near job centers will benefit residents. Neighborhood electric shuttles are an efficient way to get around the county. We support Lisa Hebner, Mayor of Solana Beach, for chair, Joe LaCava, San Diego Council President, for first vice chair, and John Minto of Santee Council Member for second vice chair. Thank you for your hard work reaching out to the community.
Our next speaker will be Cesar Javier, who will be followed by Truth.
Cesar Javier, a substitute teacher, consistent attendee of all meetings in the region of San Diego County. Air pollution, county, city, meeting. And SANDAG. Thank you, SANDAG. This election must be focused, number one, on the human dimensions. Physical, let them stand up. I think there is the tallest. Intellectual, the moral capacity, and the action thing. I stand here because it is the truth under God that the candidates from the city, the finest city of San Diego, are thus disqualified, including those support departments, etc., who are here because of the unacceptable, unintended consequences.
Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Truth, and Truth will be followed by Mark.
All right, a fraudulent code requiring a weighted vote for the chair and vice chair is a rigged game. No wonder SANDAG's been messed up. Thanks to provided statements, I appreciate Terry going for any position, but Terry is not a rotating mayor. I can't judge Minto by the resume or I'm going to have bad thoughts. And even though Lisa's generally done a good job of chairing the meetings, she wrote "and" as to why she wants to be chair, and you had plenty of opportunities to provide 2 minutes to speak, and you failed to do so. So that's an automatic no. And what you called bitter comments are the right of each person to make. What you suggested, Lisa, is that 1 minute is a means of punishing comments you or others don't like, censorship. What hypocrisy when on May 24th you condoned and allowed Sean to verbally threaten the public. Neither of you deserve civility or a seat. And you forgot to list your experience as a mayor. Reminder, my recommendations for any position are Minto, Luz, Jay Dunn, and Rebecca. I did say Bill before, but he often leaves meetings early. You can't do that as chair. 2 recommendations for a vice chair, Terry or Joe. I maybe even would throw Allison in there. Have fun clawing each other over something that doesn't have that much meaning.
Our next speaker will be Mark, who will be followed by allegedly Audra.
Mark, so I'm pretty sure you guys will pick the wrong person, but I'd like to see Jean Minto or Rebecca Jones. I hope Rebecca becomes supervisor. It's a tough call, which is more important. I suppose that might be in a way, but anyway, anyone who would actually buck the system that's going on with Newsom and his Agenda 21, young global leader, treason, would be great. Because really, you all need to remember that as Americans in the oath you took, your prime duty is to refuse to do the Agenda 21 stuff that Newsom is putting forth. That's destroying our county, absolute destroying it. From getting rid of the gas heaters for everyone, it'll really affect elderly on fixed incomes, to gas vehicles and the housing scam.
Thank you. Our next speaker is allegedly Audra, who will be followed by Gambler.
How great is it that Nora isn't here? That is fantastic. I bet all of you are very excited, right? Now you get to emulate her if you become chair, which hopefully doesn't happen because you guys all took an oath. And the funny thing is this is like a mini United Nations, and you're pushing the Agenda 21, 2030, 2050. And we need somebody who's going to stand against that and do what's right for the people, uphold your oath, and do what's necessary to make sure that we provide the resources to people, not deprive them of it. So I think that John Minto would probably be a good chair. I actually would nominate Melanie and probably Bill Wells, but they're probably not going to do that. But it's going to be telling the way that this new year goes. But look at it as a new year and a new opportunity for you guys to actually do something for the public, for the people that you represent, and not for your own agenda, not for the United Nations, which is an unelected global entity that is deciding things for us, and somebody who's not going to silence the people. Because you guys don't want to be silenced, you go up on your diatribes, you need to give the public.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gambler, who will be followed by Paul the Bold.
Gambler here. How you guys doing this fine and lovely day? Well, Nora tried to throw my ass in jail and she failed miserably. Why? Because I wanted to expose election fraud. And since we're probably not going to go ahead and do that, and whoever's going to take that seat is probably going to be corrupt and has multiple homeless facilities in their region where they go ahead and harvest registration forms so that they can go ahead and keep their offices. I definitely understand that is going on because that is what the registrar of voters does not want me to take a look at. It's just signatures. Signatures to see if they take a look. The only person in this room that actually went over to find out what the hell was going on was actually Minto. The very first day I showed up when Nora shut down the meeting when she made up some bullshit that I was attacking some people that weren't elected officials. I believe majority of you, if not all of you, are elected officials. So fuck you. You guys could suck my dick, is all I could say. So sorry. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Paul the Bold, who will be followed by Consuelo.
Happy New Year. Hope you enjoyed the holidays. You have many choices ahead and perhaps a new beginning after last year's. Please choose wisely. Please choose board leaders who respect the speakers, some of whom come a long way to speak for only a minute on each item, and the people of this county. And I mean that East County should have at least one voting rep on the board. I admire that Lisa Hebner stressed the importance of this and in general of the trust issue. The use of weighted vote to elect the chair and vice chair, whether or not it is in the law, is a recipe for a non-representative disaster, a continuation of the last year's downward spiral and illogical. You are really saying that San Diego, with its huge 40% voting share, can pretty much dictate who the officers will be. This is undemocratic. Why even have a show vote? Please buck a bad law.
Our next speaker will be Consuelo, and Consuelo will be our final speaker on this item.
Okay, Consuelo. So, Lisa, you being a primary board member for 14 years, for me, is exactly the reason why you need not head and be chair of SANDAG of this corporation. For the faulty toll readers, to the Tijuana River sewage issue, the fact that you even mentioned your long tenure here at SANDAG with you know, all these issues for me is a huge red flag and a major reason why for me and many others have zero confidence and faith in your quest of taking over. I don't know in that time of 14 years what good you've actually done, but besides laying down the blueprint for the UN's agenda, the agenda for the 21st century, you're a smart.
Thank you. That concludes the public commenters.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Now we'll open it up to our board members. I have Council President Joe LaCava.
Thank you, Mayor Hebner. And thank you to members of the public who spoke this morning. Mayor Hebner, I want to commend you on your leadership of the board over the years, and especially this past year when SANDAG went through many transitions and internal challenges. You helped steady the ship, ensuring the meetings kept running and made sure we got the agency's business done. I think you've done a great job of working collaboratively with each of the SANDAG board members, past and present, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and the rest of the board. Your strong track record, which I value as a SANDAG board member, being the second vice chair since 2022, and more importantly, your commitment to our region makes you the perfect candidate to serve our next board chair. So with that, I'm honored to make a motion to elect Solana Beach Mayor Lisa Hebner as our new SANDAG board chair and ask if there is a second for that motion.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Mayor Jones.
Thank you so much, Chair. So after all of the discussion that's happened over all of this time, everything that's happened over the last few years, we've created, and when I say we, I mean the public and then also the board, we have created a very hostile environment. We need to change that. And after a lot of discussion with Mayor Hebner about the public and how we can work better together so that we keep everyone on topic and we actually listen to you because we need to have your feedback. I personally don't want any more attacks. I'd like to figure out how we can all work together. And that's something that I think you can do, Mayor Hebner. And I really appreciate a lot of that, of our discussion. The 1 minute was a way that I think that the public felt very unheard, and I disagreed with it from the start. I think that it created a lot of disrespect from both the public and then also the board leadership. And I'm not saying that about you, Mayor Hebner. I think with positive leadership, we can move forward. So I personally would also nominate you or second that nomination or third that nomination. But I'd also like to have the second vice chair be Joe LaCava. So my motion would be Joe LaCava as a second chair, vice chair, or first vice chair, and then the second vice chair as Mayor Minto. And that would be a way for us all to move forward. I think it would be positive leadership. We would all be able to work together. And I'm hoping that everybody, and that includes the public, it includes the staff, it includes the board, we all have a part in us moving together in a positive manner, that we would all work together, that we would all figure out how to have the voices heard of the public. And then also the voices heard of the board members. No more interrupting one another, no more scoffing. There was a lot of that happened, and I have every confidence that the three of you can actually make that happen. So my motion would be to add to, and maybe we could have a friendly amendment to the original motion, maker of the motion, that we include Joe LaCava as vice chair and second vice chair as Mayor John Minto.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. I think Lolly has to point out a procedure though to you.
Yes, we're going to be conducting the elections separately. So first, we're going to vote and discuss the chair's position. And
Okay.
then after that's finished, we'll conclude with the chair position.
So those are my comments, and then I will get back to them, I guess. Thank you.
Very good. So I see no other comments. Let's call for the vote. A motion for Mayor Hebner to be chair made by Joe LaCava, second by Carolina Chavez from Sula Vista. Oh, there's more people on the board? Mayor Sanchez, did you, you think you're voting. So voting is 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 for abstain. If you would like to speak, please push the 0, not the blue 0, which isn't really a button, but the black one above it, the gray one above it. So if everybody could please it's a toggle. The speaking one is a toggle. So if you push it once, I see that your name is up, your city is up here. If you push it twice, it is no longer there. Okay, so do all of these folks want to speak then? Oceanside, Del Mar, Lemon Grove, and Carlsbad? Okay, just, okay, all right. Okay, okay. All right, so if you could please clear the board, that'd be great. All right, so it looks like all the votes are in. Francesca?
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the confidence and trust that you're putting in me for these next 2 years. I will do my very, very best to bring this board together and make sure that the public is heard and that we work collaboratively on all of the very important issues that we have to solve here in our region and the progress that we need to make sure that everybody gets where they need to go equitably, conveniently, in a time-friendly manner, and that we are able to do all of the things that are on our plate as SANDAG. We're a very unique COG or NPO, different than all the others in the state. We've got a lot more responsibility, so we'll work together to get it all done. All right. Okay, so now I would like to make a motion for Joe LaCava to be first vice chair. Second. Mayor Gasterlin, you'd like to speak?
Yes, I was going to make a motion and I fully support President LaCava. Council President LaCava. Joe has been a phenomenal force in our North County area and really has reached out regionally to all of the surrounding districts and jurisdictions, always listens, always available. And I look forward to, with hope, that you will be our vice chair.
Thank you. And Mayor Gloria.
Chair, I was just interested in making a second, but congratulations on your appointment
you.
as chair. Joe never seeks the spotlight, but so I'm gonna make him uncomfortable right now and just say he's an extraordinary leader from our city. He enjoys the unanimous support of our council, which is a group of 9 folks with very different points of view and different perspectives, represent different communities, yet they all agree that he's the best to lead that organization. And I think that same judgment is true here as well. I've seen Joe bring people together to take very complex and difficult issues and to get effective results for everyone that he represents. I'd like to see this organization benefit from his steady, calm, and thoughtful leadership. And I encourage folks to support him for first vice chair. I look forward to supporting Mayor Minto for second vice chair.
Very good. I'll call for the vote.
And that motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Excellent. Congratulations, Council President.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very honored to take on this responsibility. I look forward to working with the mayor. As my mayor said, I do have a history. Maybe it's a civil engineer in me that brings that technical expertise that takes that preponderance of listening first and then forming judgments and how do we bring everybody together. We got some really important work to do as SANDAG. We've got some problems in the past that we need to shed and move forward as a unified group. Our constituents are really depending on us. And so I'm very honored to take on this position of first chair. And I will be supporting Mr. Minto for second vice chair. So
Good. With that, I would like to nominate Mayor Minto for second vice chair. Second by, who was that? By Mayor Jones. I see nobody on the board. Please vote. I did what I was not supposed to do. Escondido.
That motion does pass with 16 yeses and 2 nos.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Congratulations, everybody. I'd like to ask my first vice chair to come assume this seat and my second vice chair to assume the other seat. Please bring your voting device, please. Oh my gosh. Quick photo. Quick photo. Quick photo. Okay, where we need the photo. Face. Now look this way. Oh, now this way? This way. Thank you, everybody. Okay, well, that concludes our election for 2025, 2026. Congratulations to us all. Let's move on now to non-agenda public and member comments. And Francesca, would you please put 2 minutes on the board for each speaker from now on?
Thank you, Chair. Next, we'll move on to non-agenda member and public comments. As a reminder, no comments shall use loud, threatening, profane, or abusive language that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting. Disorderly conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the board meeting is prohibited. Per our board policy, the amount of time allowed for each verbal public comment is determined based on the number of agenda items, the complexity of those items, and the number of persons anticipated to offer comment. This allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business while we still have a quorum. Based on those factors, the chairwoman has determined that today's meeting, each member of the public comment will be allowed 2 minutes for their comments. And also as a reminder, we will take the first 5 public commenters now, and the remainder will be called at the end of the meeting. So we will then start with Alan C., and after Alan C. will be Cesar Javier.
Thank you, Francesca, and thank you, Chair, for the 2 minutes. In case you didn't know, the supervisor meeting earlier this week, they're looking at going back to 2 minutes. Mayor Todd Gloria, thank you for attending, sir. You allowed me 3 minutes. Previous, and Mayor Voss, you also allowed 3 minutes. Can we allow at least minimal 2 minutes for every item? Because this is probably the most important meeting. We have a rep from every city, capability to hear the constituents. Please, you're here all day. You should be here all day, not break off at 2 in the afternoon. You get free food in the corner. So please allow 2 minutes, not only for this, but every agenda items. Mayor, thank you. Mayor Todd Gloria, you also allowed, if a consent item was pulled, the members of the public can also speak separately, discussion, and item get pulled. I ask, please, Mayor Todd Gloria, you can advise them. You allowed me 3 minutes, and I sat upstairs remote in this office because they provide me a laptop because I showed up in person. That was how much service we had back then. Chair Vargas is gone. We now have new chairs, vice chairs. Make the difference. Let the people get heard. And concerning the wildfires, look at your inbox. That's it in your email. The whole blame, look it up. AB 1054, $20 billion to the power companies that causes all the wildfires so they don't have to bury the power lines. CAR puts millions of dollars into a charge station not compatible, even though Tesla is going to be the standard factual normal, yet not one dime to bury the power lines. You want to solve the problems? The biggest climate footprint in California is, guess what? You know it, wildfires. And yet we're putting money into charge stations that aren't compatible. GM and Ford already switched over to Tesla because it's the de facto norm. Tell CARB, and now I guess you're going to be the new rep for CARB because Vargas is gone, that we need to start looking at sensibility. The biggest climate footprint, wildfires. What are you going to do to prevent wildfires, not put them out afterwards? Look at the email I sent you. A lot of data in there. I yield back. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Cesar Javier, who will be followed by Purita Javier.
I follow the order. Please, Mayor, I forgot the name, Gloria, and Councilor Laqadda, this is your time to redeem our, not complaint, but all efforts to bring a healthy democracy. We asked many times in our attendance to solve the issue of toxicity in our neighborhood designated as residential zone community, now predominantly resided by Asian Americans and Latino Americans. Why did the city allow the construction, location, and operation of this toxic industrial activity? Why? Is it because the owner is a special privileged citizen? In his declaration in the court, because they ordered me for restraining order, and it was approved by the judge. And right in the courtroom, he says, Mr. Javier is only a new citizen, immigrant, and he is ramping up, protesting in the city meeting. The initial response of the judge was all denied. But after some crucial moment, the decision was ordered. 3 years for attending and voicing our public opinion, stop toxicity in a residential zone designation. We wrote letter to the mayor to have a dialogue. Never.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Purita Javier, who will be followed by Robert German and then Dustin Fuller. Purita, if you'd like to step up to the podium, it's your turn to speak. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next person. All right, we'll go on to Robert German then, who will be followed by Dustin Fuller and then Mark.
2 minutes. Hi, my name is Robert German. On Wednesday, January 8th, the Board of Supervisors voted to approve, without a full board, a lease agreement with American Airlines, AKA SkyWest Airlines, to facilitate more zonies, Arizonans, to come to our county, specifically Carlsbad. More importantly, it allowed American Airlines to poison our county with more greenhouse gases on an unsafe runway, short unsafe runway at Carlsbad. The board unanimously agreed that this was okay, as long as American Airlines tried to poison us quietly and within normal business hours. While LA is closing airports due to the poisoning and the exempt status of airlines on greenhouse gases, Europe is banning flights of these puddle jumpers, flights less than 500 miles. San Diego County Board is proclaiming to one and all, come on down. Doors are open, airports open. I know this is a county contrary to what the majority of San Diegos expect. Please initiate a feasibility study to absorb San Diego County Airport, Regional Airport Authority back into SANDAG's umbrella where it belongs. San Diego County Regional Airport Authority are ultimately responsible for this 20-year-old strategic plan that has failed. And with the other minute, my goodness, 30 minutes, I would like to recommend that the SANDAG board look into an organization called Plane Pass. It is basically an organization that does user fees on corporate jets and small general aviation aircraft. It has 95 airports, including Love Field in Dallas, numerous airports in Washington, and is growing. They expect to be over 95 by the end of the year, and please look into it. It would help.
Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Dustin Fuller, followed by Mark.
Good morning. Congratulations, Chair Huebner, First Chair Joe, and Second Chair Minto. My name is Dustin Fuller. I'm the Supervising Environmental Planner at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. A couple apologies. Carlene Moore, my CEO, had intended to be here. She's really sick. So you got me, and I'm a little underdressed and not ready because I wasn't expecting to be here. So apologies for that. I'm here regarding the San Dieguito Double Track Bridge Replacement and Rail Platform Project. I've had the privilege of working with your SANDAG staff since 2009 on this project. We would like to go on record as remaining highly supportive of this project and urge this board to continue prioritizing the construction and operation. The 22nd DA Board of Directors has been supportive from the beginning on this project. We have submitted 4 to 5 letters to resource agencies for permitting and or agencies offering grant funding for the project. In February 2024, my Board of Directors passed a resolution proclaiming that Our top transportation priority is the swift construction of a seasonal rail platform that will reduce vehicular traffic during major events at the Del Mar Fairground, thereby improving local air quality and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I personally have been working with my staff, the staff at Del Mar Thoroughbred Club, State Department of General Services, and California Construction Authority to secure easements, right of entry, construction laydown, and staging areas on our property to accommodate the construction of this project. SANDAG and NCTD staff has worked closely with us to ensure that the fair, the races, and our interim events will continue during construction. So we're here to say, we hope you continue with the planning and construction of the modernization of this vital segment of the Low Sand Corridor. We'll be submitting a letter to that effect to this board in the next few days. And with that, thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker at the top of the meeting will be Mark. And at the end of the meeting, I will call on Truth, allegedly Audra, Consuelo, Paul the Bold.
Mark, I don't really care much about Snopes or respect them, but they have some reputable sources. So Snopes also found that the wealth owned by the top 1% of Americans of the fourth quarter of 2022 totaled 43.45 trillion, as compared to 4.16 trillion owned by the bottom 50% of Americans during the same period. Source: Federal Reserve. 728 billionaires now hold more wealth than half of the American households, tweeted the Fresian professor of public policy at UC Berkeley's Goldman School of Public Policy. Wealth inequality is eating this country alive, end quote. Forbes reported in 2021 that the top 1% that year comprised about 1.3 million households making more than $500,000 per year. Within that top category, the top 100% alone controlled 17.6 trillion in the last quarter of 2022. That's somewhere between a third and half. The collective net worth of America's richest 12 men has hit 2 trillion, less than 2 trillion short of the wealth of the bottom half of the U.S. So most of the problems you guys are trying to solve, homelessness, et cetera, and this, by the way, is on top of inflation, which the Federal Reserve intentionally causes and must be stopped, period, or America is gone. Already, it's seriously destroyed California and the nation. And the things you guys are trying to fix, like homelessness, none of it can be fixed without addressing this and giving us a good wealth distribution, restoring the middle class. These 12 guys, these billionaires, they should be paying for all the social programs and none of this Agenda 21 stuff. Most of the stuff you guys come up with is just another way to do a hidden tax on the general public. That's
Your time has expired. In addition to the names I already mentioned, I will also be calling Alex Wong and Angelina Neglia at the end of the meeting. And that concludes the public comments.
Very good. Okay, a couple of things. You know that we're all going to be moving offices by the springtime, and you might have noticed that we've got some funny looking screens up here instead of the permanent televisions that we used to have and curtains and things around. So this is showing that we're getting ready to move. It's going to happen in the spring. Are we talking March, February, March? Okay, so that's pretty soon. But if you can't see the screens, everything's loaded on your iPad. So just make sure that you pull those up. I wish we could get something where we could just touch on the item and it would go to that on the iPads instead of having to scroll. That would be a really nice thing because it's impossible to access. Yeah, a hyperlink. Thank you. That's the right word. All right. Next, I'd like to welcome Mayor Snow here from Lemon Grove. Welcome to the Board of Directors. I'd like to welcome Mayor Sanchez from Oceanside. Welcome to the Board of Directors. And also to Joy Lines, Councilmember Joy Lines for the Water Authority. Welcome as an advisory role to the Board of Directors. Appreciate you being here. Looking forward to hearing from you all. Okay, would any of you like to make any comments? Are you good? Yeah, you're fine. Oh, yes. Oh, well, I'm coming to you. Yeah, I'm coming to you. All right. I'm also going to take a moment to recognize and honor Jonathan Frankel, former chair and outgoing member of the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee. Jonathan joined ITALK in 2021, and during his tenure, he played a vital role in ensuring the voter mandates outlined in the Transnet Ordinance and Expenditure Plan were upheld. He also contributed thoughtful and constructive recommendations to strengthen the financial integrity and performance of the Transnet program. On behalf of the Board of Directors, we're pleased to present this plaque, which I have right here. And I would like to come meet you at the podium. I really do appreciate all the work that the ITALK does. You give our public the trust and the confidence that these funds are being spent wisely. Your independent oversight with your levels of expertise really helps us to understand better at the board level as well what we're spending it all on. And we really like it when you say that we're doing a good job, but we appreciate it also when you say we're not, and we take advantage of that. So
thank you so much, Chair Huebner. Congratulations and good morning, members of the board. It's been a great pleasure to serve twice as the chair of the ITALK. And I think what I learned is obviously there was lots of technical information, lots of audits. But what I enjoyed most was hearing from the staff at our member agencies, which are your public works directors, your folks that are day to day that are using this money to improve every single one of your communities. And I learned that Transnet is critical, no matter whether you're a North County, more suburban jurisdiction, or whether you're an urban jurisdiction. Transnet is a truly essential source of funds, and your staff are doing a great job every single day utilizing this money to improve quality of life for your residents. So I hope that you support the program moving forward. I hope that eventually we can extend this program, and thank you so much for this recognition. Thank you.
okay, now for board member non-agenda comments, Mayor Burkholder. I mean, Councilmember Burkholder, I just gave you a raise.
Got a promotion.
Promotion and a raise.
Didn't even know. Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to the new board, Executive Director Board. I just have two quick things. First of all, Francesca, thank you so much for releasing the member comments, public comments rather early and throughout the day so that we actually do have time to read them before the meeting. I so appreciate that. And those of us that do read them, I know really appreciate that. And public, thank you for your comments. And the other thing is just, Mario, when we are conducting work in jurisdictions, I just want to please remind the third-party contractors, Caltrans, et cetera, to be sure to coordinate with our planning departments. We've had instances where roads were going to be closed, where there was activity occurring outside of construction hours, et cetera, et cetera. And then our residents call us and they want to know what's going on. So if we could just remind everyone to please work within the planning department's regulations, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maxon.
Can you hear me? I don't have a dedicated microphone this time. Good morning. Congratulations on your election as the dream team for the officers. I do represent the unincorporated area, over 500,000 people. And of course, this seat is not a voting seat. Today, I want to note for the record that the county is not present. And so therefore, all action taken by this board today, voting action, effectively has disenfranchised the unincorporated area. We're not present and we don't have a vote. And I hope in 2025, I expect in 2025 that this board overall will do a better job of ensuring that the unincorporated area is not disenfranchised. I realize county being absent is not the fault of the board, but there must be something in place that takes into account that there's over 500,000 people who are not participating in the proceedings today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Gasterland.
Yes. Thank you very much. And congratulations to all three of you. Lisa, it's been a great year whenever you've taken the role of the chair on the board. And I really appreciate having you as our chair. And Del Mar is glad to be sandwiched in between Solana Beach and Joe LaCava's district. So we feel well represented among the leadership. That said, I want to let this board know that regarding the double tracking, the fairgrounds platform, and tied to that, the trestle bridge replacement, please remember that the construction for this is the project is a $330 million project. And on Monday, January 6th, our Del Mar City Council unanimously directed our city manager to convey a request, this will be coming, for a pause on the trestle bridge replacement as its environmental studies, as we've heard from Del Mar citizen Shirley Weiss in her public comment to this board. The environmental studies were done long ago, and they were done without the context of railroad relocation. So moving forward with the bridge at this time will create a situation in which the $330 million project may become redundant and unneeded. It will be redundant and unneeded if certain of the relocation alternatives that were listed in the June NOP are found to be the preferred alternative after the environmental studies. So I would urge that we think carefully about moving forward with spending the better part of $500 million while we really don't know what we're doing in the area in the long run. Thank you.
Mayor Duncan?
Thank you and good morning, everyone. And congratulations to the new chairs. I think you'll do an excellent job, and I'm excited about a fresh SANDAG experience after the last couple of years. I'm not meaning any harm to anybody, but it's a good thing, I think. So I appreciate your service. I just wanted to take a brief moment because we didn't talk about it on the board. No one mentioned it. And I know Mayor Gasterlin from Del Mar and Councilmember Fisher from Imperial Beach both had submitted statement of interest of potentially being considered for chairs. And I just wanted to state publicly in front of the board, I hold you both in very high regard. I appreciate the intense detail, Mayor Gasterlin, that you give to issues that come before us. And Councilmember Fisher, always working with you, and Councilmember McKay behind you, particularly on the sewage transborder pollution issue. I think you're both excellent members of this board, and I appreciate your willingness to serve. So I just wanted to say that because we kind of rushed through that a little quickly. So thank you so much. And I think both of you would have been excellent as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I see, Councilmember, I keep wanting to call you Deputy Mayor still. Councilmember Edson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment with regard to the San Diego Lagoon Bridge Replacement Double Track and Special Events Platform. This is a project that's long overdue. It's a 109-year-old wood trestle bridge that's been sitting in silty water for 109 years. It's past time to replace this bridge. It's well past its life, and this investment is something, and all the environmental that's been done on it over the years, it's ready. It needs to be done. Thanks.
Thank you. Board, I will now turn it over to Mario for your comments.
Thank you. Happy New Year to all of you. Wish you the best. A couple of updates. As Chair Huebner mentioned, you could see that we have some interim and some changes at the boardroom. So the move has started, and our goal is sometime in March, if not February, to have our move to that office, the new building. Also, as an update, and it wasn't mentioned, on the federal budget bill, there was $250 million funding, additional funding for the Tijuana River. That I think a lot of you were really working the lines, the phone lines, and the GR teams and many agencies and the cities. Everybody, I think, was all hands on deck on trying to make sure that that was there. So thank you for that support, and thank you to our Congress. Excuse me. Regarding the budget, I think we will be coming with some conversations in the near future. Our chief financial officer, once her team gets the right projections or the more accurate projections, we will be adjusting our revenue projections on Transnet by a couple of percentage points, between 2 to 4%. But when we have the information, our CFO will be coming to you. I don't think this is any surprise. I think all the cities and everybody's dealing with this. So this is not something also to alert. It's the regular pendulum. Sometimes projections are over, sometimes projections are are under. But it also affects the TDA money that the transit agencies get for operations. And our CFO has already begun conversations with North County Transit and with MTS, alerting them of those adjustments of what could be coming. Also regarding the airport transit connection, thank you. We were yesterday at the airport board. It was good to see some of you there. The team will be coming in with an update, a more robust update here to the board, where we're going to be talking about a phase approach. That we've been saying this now for a while. You know, Terminal 1 is coming. We really need to enhance what we have, and then we can plan for further ahead. But we need to also have a plan to immediately deal with the demands and enhance the frequencies on the existing services. And also, you know, MTS is now going to be putting after hours service from South Bay. I think they call it the Blue Rapid. And, you know, I think I mentioned this before, but when I was talking with airport leadership, one of their biggest concerns is that the employees who show up at 3 and 4 a.m. have to start work, don't have transit to get to their jobs. And a good chunk of the majority of the airport employees are coming from South Bay. So those are the things that we need to take into consideration. So the team will be coming in, presenting to the board phase approach, and a little bit of a reality-based approach of, you know, getting things done, not losing focus on the long run, but dealing with the issues that we have in hand right now. So that's on the airport. On the Lausanne realignment, the BA study has been concluded. The technical team is getting together and getting the final report done for that. We're hoping to bring our recommendations, our staff recommendations on February 28th to the board. And then we need to proceed with the environmental process. If not, that project is not going anywhere. So all this that we're doing is to actually begin just the environmental process, to begin the detail analysis. So we'll be coming to the board February 18 on this subject. Something that is important, on the national-wide text scam, still there, it seems that they hyping up again, text messages getting to different people saying, hey, pay your fast track account. Sometimes it's for the Bay Area, sometimes it's for here, for LA, but a lot of us have been getting those text messages. I want to highlight that SANDAG does not send text messages for toll transactions. And finally, I would like to acknowledge our Regional Planning Program Manager, Susan Friedman, for being recognized with the 2024 Climate Leader Award from the San Diego Regional Climate Collaborative. I don't know if Susan is in the room right now. If not, well, we're just highlighting that great recognition that she got, and we applaud that. And that concludes my comments.
Well deserved for Susan. She's been working hard at this topic for a very long time. She's excellent. All righty, so we'll now move on to the consent agenda. Francesca, do we have any public comments?
Here we do. Our first commenter will be Alan C., who will be followed by Cesar Javier.
Well, you caught me with shorthanded here. I was reviewing the other agenda. Yeah, concerned the draft of board agendas. Yeah, basically is make sure in the minutes you put out the whole thing that we're gonna read it, because I really didn't have nothing prepared for it. I apologize.
Give them 2 minutes, they take 12 seconds. Well, I'll give you 2 minutes, you take 12 seconds.
Our next speaker will be Cesar Javier, who will be followed by Truth.
Can I have your time, sir? Cesar Javier, I revere repetition as a learning tool, and we are doing it. I hope Mayor Gloria and Joe Locaba, sir, are listening intently. The minutes is a patrimony. Oh, where is my friend Mario? Where is he? I have to emphasize this because history is a benchmark where we draw another deviation for the purpose of a change that is based on adequacy, responsiveness, timeliness, efficiency, and effectiveness. I hope the mayor and again the president of the council of the city of San Diego is the finest city leadership. SANDAG will provide us the learning process, continued learning process, and therefore it should be engraved and etched robustly in the minutes. So everyone, new or veteran, would be able to look back in giving the inputs, the voice that is assigned or micronutrients in our healthy democracy. Thank you, SANDAG. I will be a consistent student, hopefully like the mayor of the city of San Diego, where the issue internationally, constantly exploding. I think you are accountable on this, Mr.
Your time has
Mayor.
expired. Our next speaker will be Truth, who will be followed by Mark.
Popcorn. All right. I said pipe down with your popcorn back there. Item 3. Thanks for finally providing minutes with meat. It helps me remember what actually was said. And 2 minutes, I'm actually the one not in a good mood about it, but I'm glad I can breathe. That's nice. Some credit is owed to Agnes and Melanie for questioning that taboo of hiding what was discussed. Take note that the minutes reflect that Katie and Bucky Voss were both MIA again and again and again. How many times is that? Can we remove them? I don't think it's okay to just show up for when there's some power vote going on. That definitely includes Todd, Gloria. Your job is to show up here every single meeting so I can see it in the minutes, of course. Item 4, it must be nice to get $100 per meeting. If I made that, it'd be $14,400 owed for last year. Can you do the math? That's 144 meetings. I counted up when I put my calendar away. That's less than last year. Last year was 156. Item 5, I see in the draft agendas that public comments and member comments are in the same category. So doesn't that mean that everyone, including board members, should be allotted the same time limit on speaking? We can also limit board comments to only 5 speakers at this time. If the number of board comments exceeds 5, additional board comments should be taken at the very end of the agenda. Doesn't that sound equitable? That's what you guys promote, right? For January 24th, item 8, instead of a grand jury report, could we get a DOJ report? It's fair, right? And for item 9, instead of a SANDAG 201, which I actually have no idea what that is, could we get a SANDAG 101? I mean, see, I need it as to why there's always so much nonsense that goes on here, including the facade of 2 minutes. Oh, we're going to, here's your crumbs, slaves. No, I deserve 2 minutes. I've earned 2 minutes. I do research. I absolutely deserve earned 2 minutes every single time. 3 minutes when I'm in other jurisdictions that are much more friendly. For February 14th, item 9 about the purple line, I expect false information to justify pre-planned decisions, as always, in this corrupted constitutional republic.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mark, who will be followed by allegedly Audra.
Mark, so regarding the review of the draft board agendas, when I mentioned that 1% of the population makes more than 500,000 per year, I guess that would include Mario. Well, maybe not quite, getting real close. And honestly, I don't think anybody I know would miss his job being gone and SANDAG being gone. Now, it's not that homelessness doesn't need to be helped, but Todd Gloria is a disgrace, proposing 1,000 beds that will cost almost $1 billion. And I mean, that's just an absurd amount of money. If you do the math on that, divide like, I don't know, $900 million, almost $1 billion. 900 million by 1,000, even over a 33-year period. And it was 13 million that the guy paid for the building that he wants to have a lease on. That means he'll make his money again for a new building every 7 years. I wish I could rent my house and buy a new house every 7 years. What BS on our tax dollars. Obviously, of course, in a society that cared, they'd stop inflation. They would give an equal wealth or a good wealth distribution, such as is suggested by both parties. 9 out of 10 people at both parties in a study. And for instance, I suggested 3D printing 10 by 10 rooms that are stackable and mobile. And they could be, you could put 12,000 of them on Fiesta Island for about $12 million. For another $12 million, you could buy them each a 1,000-watt scooter. This is a serious scooter. They're doing none of these things. You wouldn't, once they were there, you wouldn't have to subsidize anything with taxes, which is unsustainable and a scam and just keeps lowering everyone. They keep raising minimum wage. They're not raising the middle class. It's just destroying the middle class till we'll all be till we'll all be poverty.
Our next speaker will be allegedly Audra, followed by Paul the Bold.
Man, the energy in this room is so different. It's great. Thank you, Lisa, for giving us 2 minutes. I do appreciate that, and I would like to tell you that so that you understand how great that is, even if it is breadcrumbs. But as far as the board of directors, upcoming meetings, I think you guys need to really think about the incoming administration and what's going to happen come January 20th with this invasion that is happening on our border, where children are being trafficked, and our own government has lost track of these children. Hundreds of thousands of children are missing, they're being trafficked, they're being raped. This is something that you guys need to stand against, and I know Bill Wells has been talking about getting out of sanctuary status or doing something along those lines, and it would behoove you guys to bring forward some kind of resolution or something to say that you are going to work with the federal government, because if you go against the federal government, San Diego is going to suffer at the cost of your decision to not do so. And I think that it should concern you that HHS is actually involved in this trafficking. I've told you guys this many times, and nobody seems to want to talk about it, but 8 million children go missing every year in the world around us. But within the United States, 800,000 children go missing of our American children. Over 500,000 children that have come across this border unaccompanied are gone. It shouldn't have to be one of your children for it to matter. But you need to be standing in the gap for all of these people, because the people that are coming across the border are being exploited, they're being murdered and raped along the way, and nobody seems to want to address it. But somebody needs to stand in the gap. And Bill, it would behoove you to do something with this board to make a stand, even if nobody is going to support you in it. So I hope that you make the right decision.
Our next speaker will be Paul the Bold, followed by Consuelo.
Draft agendas. January 24th. Glad you're discussing the grand jury report. I would like more info on whether SANDAG is meeting the goals set in the internal audit, more than a performance review. The title for item 9 is a bit ambitious, SANDAG 201, because I'm not sure if you passed SANDAG 101, given the sort of clown show and intermittent crimes perpetrated last year, which, you know, loss of trust, and last year was really disgusting. But to be fair, the organization does seem to be making slow progress in the right direction of openness and accountability. February 14th, Happy V-Day. Hope the ethical climate survey includes a status report on the audit findings. Approval of minutes. There is a bright spot. There is extensive discussion, informative comments from many members in number 10, the year in review. Thank you, Francesca, and I hope that this sort of summary continues. But it is mostly a list of names like the Oscars and who did what, not very informative. When you omit details, it is one way of dissing the public to make them spend their precious time listening to tapes or searching records. But I think Lisa Hebner and other people here got that under control, I hope, for this year. And finally, the meetings and events attended by
Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Consuelo, who will be followed by Gambler, and Gambler will be our last speaker on this item.
So I just wanted to highlight how the SANDAG Corporation and essentially all of this is to fulfill the agenda, the agenda for the 21st century. And so there are some new faces, and I would urge and encourage you to please do look that stuff up. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not just, I mean, everybody's going to be affected by this. And the fact that people are just kind of like, whatever, you know, taking care of bike lanes and promising beds for billions of dollars. It's just, this is it's going to affect all of us. They're coming for our property. They're coming for our arms. They're coming for everything. And it's just kind of, I mean, these meetings, every time I come here, I'm just kind of like, wow, the fact that the majority of the county has no clue you people even exist. This corporation exists. It's really sad. Maybe that's something you can do, Lisa. Maybe you can make it a point to address our local corrupt media and have an announcement to the people that, hey, we're here. We're kind of calling the shots for your lives and your movement. And yeah, make it a point to at least let the public know what you're doing. Because I guarantee you it would be more than the handful that come in every single week. I guarantee you you'd have a lot more input. And well, that's probably why you wouldn't do it. But yeah, with that being said, Happy New Year.
And our next speaker will be Gambler. Go ahead.
Gambler here. How you guys doing? I don't share the same feelings that Audra does for Bill, because I do recognize the fact that he gathered all the homeless. Why? So that you could go ahead and harvest their ballots, so that you could secure your seat? I'm pretty sure that was the reason, because you also spend an ungodly amount of money for a section right in front of the Hells Angels Club. And then you put a park right, like a park thing saying, hey, bunch of people, let's go hang out in front of the Hells Angels Club. That is how much you care about your citizens, that you just want to waste all their fucking money. So I don't share the same opinion because you get on TV and you say you are opposed to this, but when all of your actions show the otherwise. I understand Trump is in office and you want to get on his good side, much like many of you guys do. But here's the deal. Your records show the fact that you guys voted for all this crap. Your records show the fact that you guys are wasting our money. The records show that you did not clear out the storm drains and allowed houses to flood. Our records show the fact that you guys do all that you guys are just wasting our money, throwing it to all your pet projects instead of handling the stuff that you want to. You're allowing HHSA to go ahead and traffic people, sending them, selling people off to people, because you guys are more interested in wasting the county money. You guys are more interested in securing your vote that you won't even look or even address the security of the elections, so that you could continue your fraudulent claims. Ain't that right, Todd, you fucking dip? So, the next time you guys want to fly fucking pride flags, let's go ahead and put 4 of them together to show the Nazi flag. That's what it really represents. It wants to destroy our nation, trying to go ahead and separate us in every single action that you guys take. You guys don't try to do anything to help us.
Your time has expired, and that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind the public that remember, try and keep on topic. If this is consent, try and find a connection to consent to your topic, to your comments, so that we can gather them in the right context. Thank you. So now we're on to board member comments. Councilmember Burkholder.
Sorry, Chair, I thought we were on consent. I need to speak on consent.
We are on consent.
Okay, you said board. I was just.
Did I say? I'm
No,
sorry.
you said board member comments, but I didn't know if we were
For
on
consent.
consent.
For
Thank
consent.
you. Very quickly, I don't wish to necessarily pull item 5, but I do wish to ask staff to include the reports that were requested on September 8th, 2023, and again on April 26th, 2024, that this board voted unanimously on, which explains the ridership of the.
So you're referring to one of the draft agendas and an item that
Yes.
will be on the draft agenda?
February 14th, item number 9.
Okay, great. You'd like
Thank
to have
you.
those included? Very good.
And I'm not being rude, but I do have to leave. I'm sorry.
I know you told me.
Thank you.
I understand that. May I have a motion to approve consent? Motion by Ellers, second by Sanchez.
With the addition.
I'm sorry, Gloria, I'm sorry. It came from that direction.
With the
Gloria
addition of
Sanchez.
the language.
Yes, very good. Thank you. All right, please vote.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Very good. Now we'll move on to the Otime Supportive Entry Project. Mario.
So the team is going to be presenting what it's kind of twofold. It's the federal agreement that we have been working for 2 years with U.S. Customs and Border Protection and with the General Service Administration. You all have seen some of the tables that will be shown. As we've been going through and presenting phases as we're going with this project. I think what's humongous is this agreement basically sets the stage for the beginning of the construction of the port of entry and sets the relationship that the federal government wants and with us and with the spirit of how we would be helping United States border, U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So the team will discuss the amounts. A lot is for equipment for CBP, for the building maintenance, and it was what the enabling legislation had as the principle on it. I also want to thank in advance a lot of support in the last couple of months. It's been through the years, but you know, there's been Mayor Gloria has been also working the phones, Governor Newsom, Senator Alex Padilla, federal senator, Congressman Juan Vargas, Director Didi Myers from GOBES, as well as Toxomi Chacan. They've all been really helping trying to get this agreement to the finish line. And I don't know, Ann, if you want to have Ann Fox from Caltrans, which is we're working on this project jointly, if you have any comments on it.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. And I'll add to those or double down on the thank yous as far as the champions we have had out there, both at our congressional and state levels. And so what I want to preface this presentation to is to just acknowledge that the Otay Mesa East project has remained a regional, state, federal, and international priority for us. As we've created the border master plan, we've received presidential permits, we've done the studies that have shown the many dollars and jobs lost and the air pollution created by the long delays along our shared borders. California has invested more than half of the $1.3 billion project cost and has spent hundreds of millions more building out the corridor and the connections we have with state routes 905 and 125. The federal government, state, and region have made the investment. We have built the infrastructure, the new roads, the utilities, the technology, the air quality monitors out there, in addition to over 180 acres of environmental mitigation. The actions you as a board take today on a project that has come before you and previous boards many times as we've progressed will allow SANDAG and Caltrans to step forward and towards opening of the State Route 11 Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project. Awarding the contract ensures that we get the Otay Mesa East back on path to construction and opening as a much-needed port of entry by end of 2027. This is certainly no small feat. There was no roadmap for this. It's taken decades and nearly 2-3 years of weekly meetings and negotiations to reach this deal. And just to acknowledge our support, yesterday I did sign the federal project agreement that's before you on behalf of Caltrans and the many people who have worked to plan, design, build, and negotiate all of this. So thank you.
Maria, Betsy, Nikki, you want to take it over? I think one thing that I do want to highlight is the premise of this agreement is, and I've said this through the years, the goal is to minimize the risk to SANDAG. And that is very important. You're going to see that there's bonds that are going to be issued. They're non-recourse bonds. So if for whatever reason something happens, the bond buyers are taking that risk. There is no nexus to any other ledger income or source of revenue that SANDAG has. It's a total risk that the industry would be taking. That is very important. And also, Betsy, I know will probably highlight a lot of the legalities, but we have been working very hard on reducing the risk to the agency. And we really appreciate, because like Ann said, Director Fox said, half of the funding for this project is coming from state dollars, and pretty much almost the other half will come, let's say 40% of it from the same federal government, and the rest will be the bonds. And it's probably, I'm giving you a wrong percentage, but I'm just putting it in perspective. So I'll let the team take it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Ann. My name is Maria Rodriguez Molina. I'm the Director of Mega Projects Border and Goods Movement. With me today, I have Nikki Tianco, South County Trade Corridor Director at Caltrans, and Betsy Blake, our Senior Legal Counsel at SANDAG. This project has been in the makings for over 20 years. It is important for the region, for the state, and for the nation, as it supports a critical supply chain that brings across more than $60 billion of goods every year. The project will reduce emissions, facilitate movement of people of goods, and provide redundancy, safety, and security at the border. I want to summarize what are we doing today, because the reading material was very dense and complicated. It has two parts. Part A, we are asking you to approve the pre-construction contract for the CMGC. The CMGC, it's a methodology for delivering projects. It allows SANDAG to bring a contractor early in the process, to collaborate with the designer that we already have on board, and we're at 60% design. And together, the contractor and the designer finalize the design. This really reduces the amount of CCOs, change orders you get during construction. You identify risks early on. And on top of that, you also negotiate a cost together with SANDAG before you proceed to construction. So that method was authorized by this board I believe, a year and a half ago. I might be wrong on the date, but it was authorized and we proceeded with the advertisement. So today we're asking to approve the pre-construction part of that contract, which is just participating in the design and starting negotiations for the actual construction agreement. Part B of the presentation, which will be the bulk of the discussion today, is to authorize the CEO to proceed and sign the federal project agreement. This agreement outlines the roles of all the agencies involved. It outlines who is responsible for design, construction, commissioning, who will own the facilities, how the toll will be split to support the operations and maintenance of all of the facilities, the state facilities, the federal facilities, and our own facilities, the back office, the intelligent transportation system. Betsy will dive into the terms, but let's start with item 6A. As I explained, the CMGC contract has two parts: pre-construction services and construction services. We put out a request for qualifications in July. We got 2 proposals, and we recommend Atkinson Clark, a joint venture, as the contractor for this project. The length of the pre-construction services will be up to 18 months, and the amount is $3.5 million. These funds are federal funds that we have for the design. The next steps, if executed today, we will continue to negotiate the construction agreement, and we'll be back here probably late summer to ask you to proceed with the construction contract part. The federal project agreement represents a truly monumental moment for us, as it took 2.5 years to negotiate. And for the past 3 weeks, we worked on daily workshops, very long meetings throughout the holidays to make sure we met the goal. And the goal, we put this goal a year ago, was to finish it by the end of December. We almost made it. We actually finalized the agreement on January 2nd, and then we were able to provide it to you on January 3rd. I don't want to speak to it a lot because Betsy will really dive into it. So I'm going to pass it to Nikki Tianco to do the project update, and then I'll talk briefly about the financial plan.
Just very quickly, I'd like to provide a quick comment on item 6A. With the long traditions of working together, Caltrans was also part of the CMGC contractor selection process with SANDAG on this project, and we continue to oversee and work with SANDAG throughout the life cycle of this project. Both agencies, as you have known, have had successful projects under the CMGC delivery method, like the one at Midcoast Trolley. Moving along on this slide here, we have moved far in the delivery of this project. California has dedicated $1.3 billion to this project. We've completed construction of the roads and infrastructures connecting to the new port. Existing utilities have been relocated. New utility lines have been brought to the perimeter of the site. Again, we have already built new roads, utilities, border wait time system, and fiber optic, air quality monitors, and the 181 acres of the mitigation site. 60% of the design of the port of entry facility has already been completed. However, negotiations with the federal government lasted longer than expected and delayed construction for this final piece. Important to take note, this facility will be operated by multiple agencies. With U.S. Customs Border Protection checking for security, we have California Highway Patrol alongside with U.S. DOT's Federal Motor Carrier Services Administration will inspect for safety of the vehicles before they enter into the state highway system. Also, I'd like to take note that since Caltrans owns the right-of-way, a gift to nations acceptance of the federal facilities will be performed, and Betsy Blake will talk about that more later on. As for Mexico, their portion is substantially complete for both roadways and building infrastructures, although full completion is not possible until Otay Mesa East is built. Before it passes back to Maria, according to estimates, the project will create around 90,000 more jobs in the United States. Recent economic analysis show that Otay Mesa East port of entry will result in 20 to 33% increase in the economic effects of cross-border freight, 750 million of travel time savings annually, 3 million of emissions savings annually by reducing border wait times, and a benefit cost ratio of nearly 5-to-1 over 20 years.
Thank you, Nikki. I think most of you have seen this slide before, but we want to remind you of the project cost is $1.3 billion, with the majority of the funding coming from federal FHWA funds and state funds. The local funds that you see there were used to match grants and to leverage more funding, and they were mostly spent to build the SR 125 connectors. The financial structure, as Mario mentioned before, includes non-recourse toll revenue bonds. This means that the toll revenues will be used, only toll revenues will be used to repay the debt, and it reduces financial exposure for SANDAG. So if we dive a little bit more into the detail, on the left graphic, we show the funding that we used to acquire all of the right-of-way, build SR11, and build all of the connectors to SR 905 and SR 125. On the right side is the financing for what needs to get built now. So the port of entry, the intelligent transportation system and tolling, and the commercial vehicle enforcement facility, which is the state facility to inspect trucks. Most of the funding, again, comes from grants, with $192 million of TCEP state grant, $150 million of infra federal grant, $71 million of federal formula funds that come through the state. And then the bonds are required to fully fund the project are estimated at $271 million. You can also see there are $15 million of Transnet border that complete the financial package. What I really want to highlight here is we are creating a new model on how to build a port of entry. Not only we're using the tolls to pay back the bonds that we need to actually construct the facilities, but we're also utilizing the tolls collected from users that cross the future Otay Mesa East to pay for operations and maintenance of all of the facilities included in this corridor. So we're paying operations and maintenance for the ports of entry. We're transferring that money to the federal government. We're paying for operations and maintenance of the state facilities, and we'll pay operations and maintenance for the tolling and ADS here at SANDAG. The goal of the project, and Betsy will mention this again, was to be revenue neutral. We all have budgetary issues across the state, and to make this project successful, we were given the task to make it revenue neutral. We are almost there, with the exception of CBP staffing. That's something that Betsy will explain how we'll get funded. Thank you.
So I think you all know that this project involves a lot of agreements. You've probably seen me more than you'd like. But those suite of agreements, a big chunk of them are with the Mexican federal government. And we were here before the board in July seeking approval of those agreements. And those address how are we going to collect tolls and how do we split those tolls up. The other big suite of agreements is with the federal government. And that's what's before you today. And those address things like how specific to the U.S. port of entry, how are we going to design it, deliver it, convey it, and operate and maintain it for 40 years? So the action item that's before the board on 6B is asking to adopt a resolution that would authorize execution of the federal project agreement, which I'll talk about. It addresses those major issues that I just mentioned: design, delivery, conveyance, operation, and maintenance for the 40 years. It also deals with related future donation acceptance agreements, which will reflect the terms of the federal project agreement, but it addresses the nitty-gritty details. For example, we need to get the draft legal description for the property that we're going to be conveying to the federal government. That will go in a DAA, donation acceptance agreement. So before I dive in, I just want to remind everyone who are the parties to this agreement. So we have the project sponsors, who are SANDAG and Caltrans. Then we have the federal partners. And first you have GSA, or General Services Administration. They're essentially the landlords for the federal government. Then you have Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, and I think you all know they run our ports of entry. I'll try not to use many acronyms during this presentation, but there are lots of them. In case I do, I think you all know OME is Otay Mesa East, a POE or LPOE is a port of entry, and then of course the FPA is the Federal Project Agreement, and the DAA is that Donation Acceptance Agreement that I just mentioned. I'll try not to do that. So as you see on this timeline, the Federal Project Agreement, it's taken over 2.5 years to bring to you today for approval. Now this project's unique, it's innovative, and it could be a model for future ports of entry. But it is a case of first impression for all the parties. And so it has taken time to develop and figure out how is it going to work. I'm not going to read this timeline for you. I think our past board members are familiar with it because we've tried to keep you apprised of the negotiations as they have gone on. Some key dates worth noting: back in December of 2023, we came to agreement with GSA and CBP on the major terms for the Federal Project Agreement. And so SANDAG and Caltrans, we developed our first draft of the Federal Project Agreement, which we shared with the federal partners over a year ago, or actually probably just about a year ago. Last month, we got GSA and CBP's revisions, and we worked through the holidays to bring those to the board today. So I want to talk next about some of the legal and practical parameters that have guided this agreement. The first one's the state law. So we have the Otay Mesa East Toll Facility Act, and that's the law that permits the project. It also limits how toll revenues that are collected, how they can be used. And it's worth noting that the law permits us to use those toll revenues to build the federal government a port of entry, and also to support them in their operations of that facility. One of the other parameters was the tolling allocation agreement that SANDAG signed with Mexico in 2022. And that agreement requires that the toll revenues that are collected by SANDAG on behalf of the two countries be split equitably, so essentially 50-50. And the key takeaway here is SANDAG can only share our portion of those toll revenues with the federal government. We couldn't share Mexico's portion. Third, we also sought to limit SANDAG's financial exposure, which obviously Maria and Mario have talked about. We're limiting that to the toll revenues that are actually collected. So we're doing this in a couple of ways. One, as they both mentioned, we're funding the project through grants and those non-recourse toll revenue bonds. You've already heard about it twice. I'll just put it in practical perspective though. When bondholders buy these non-recourse bonds, they take a risk and they know the only thing backing them up is the toll revenues from the project. They cannot come to SANDAG's, for example, Transnet revenues, if for some reason toll revenues are not as projected. One of the other ways that we're trying to minimize that financial exposure is that we're not making specific promises to GSA and CBP that they're going to be entitled to a certain amount of revenue. And we're going to discuss this in more detail in a bit, but essentially, instead of promising them that they're going to get X amount every year, instead we say of the amount that's available for sharing, you get a percentage of that. So let's talk a little bit about the major terms of the Federal Project Agreement. And first, we've got the capital build, and SANDAG and Caltrans were responsible for that, and building the port of entry facilities themselves, as well as the supporting facilities. Now, once we build it, we're responsible to convey it, that U.S. port of entry itself, to the federal government, which we'll talk about in a second, and the related donation acceptance agreement. Now, for their part, GSA and CBP, they're responsible to operate the facility, staff it, maintain it, and modernize it. And of course, they're going to do that with the help of SANDAG's residual toll revenue. And we're going to talk about some caveats to that in a bit, as well as what is the residual toll revenue. So I'm not going to read this slide or the next one for you. It kind of goes over the Federal Project Agreement's high-level terms. I do want to direct you to attachment 1 in the board report. And that attachment outlines all of the Federal Project Agreement's essential terms. It's a really helpful reference guide. One item I do want to highlight now, though, is how long will this agreement go on? What are we signing on for? So the federal projects agreement term it's consistent with the toll allocation agreement. And so that means that it will be in place until the later of 2063, or as long as it takes SANDAG to pay off its initial bond obligations and any obligations to Mexico under that 2022 toll allocation agreement. Another thing worth noting here is the federal project agreement does have what lawyers often refer to as an evergreen provision. So if this project is working well and the SANDAG board in Mexico decide to continue our tolling arrangement under substantially similar terms to what's in the current agreement, then the federal project agreement would also continue and the remaining revenues would be split 3 ways. 1 part to SANDAG Caltrans, the sponsors, 1 part to GSA, and 1 part to CBP. So as Mario always says, follow the money. So let's start first with what money will we be sharing under the federal project agreement. I use the term residual toll revenue. So I want to explain how we get to residual toll revenue. I think a lot of you probably are familiar with this chart. It explains how all the tolls are initially split up. Now you'll see in this box that says net toll revenues, 7.4 billion. This project is projecting over its 40 years that there will be $7.4 billion in toll revenues that will be split equitably between the countries, between SANDAG and Mexico. But you might remember that Mexico is allowing SANDAG to use its 10% or 10% of its share every month to fund up our reserve accounts for our bonds. And that helps us get a better bond rating. So every month, NAB Bank's going to send us 60% and SICT or Mexico 40%. We're then going to make our bond payments. We're going to fund up those reserve accounts. Then at the end of the year, we need to pay Mexico back that 10% plus any additional interest. The amount remaining after we do that is the residual toll revenue that we have to share with the federal government and amongst the sponsors. So let me take you to that chart. So how much residual toll revenue are we projecting, and then how are we proposing to split it up? Our projections indicate that we'll have a little over $2 billion in residual toll revenue to share between GSA, CBP, and the sponsors over approximately 40 years. And it would be split up between the 4 funds that you see here. Now, as this pie chart notes, each fund has a maximum funding level. So that maximum funding level, it is not a guarantee. I want to be very clear about that. Simply put, if there are sufficient revenues, this is the maximum amount that each fund could get initially under the initial term of the agreement. And so those maximum amounts for each fund are essentially split up, as you see there, with 25% going to the SANDAG fund for SANDAG and Caltrans to use for operation and maintenance, improvements within the corridor. Then about 25% to CBP and another 25% to GSA for operation and maintenance. You'll also see that there's about another 25% that's going to a GSA modernization fund for the port of entry. That will not be paid out until the very later years of the project. And obviously, that's the time when you look at modernizing a facility. And it's also a time when we anticipate there being more residual toll revenue. So the FPA also provides that SANDAG will fund up to $81.7 million in commencement of operation contributions for key CBP equipment. So things like their furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, their fleet. We're going to be funding up things that are important for security and throughput. We're also going to be putting about $10 million into GSA's Facility Operations Fund to support them in early operations. So as I mentioned, the FPA addresses how we actually convey the port of entry and future residual revenues to the federal government, but it's not enough to simply state it in the FPA or Federal Project Agreement. The federal government also requires us to comply with their process. And that process requires that for them to be able to accept these gifts, we need to execute a related donation acceptance agreement that I mentioned earlier. So the DAA for the port of entry, it's not yet finalized because, as I mentioned, we need to get that draft legal description and some other minor details, but it would be in accordance with the Federal Project Agreement. Now, the DAA the donation acceptance agreement and the federal project agreement must be signed in order for us to break ground on the facilities. If we were to fail to execute the DAA within a reasonable time, which is not defined in the agreement, we've set a goal date of March 31st of this year, but it's just a goal. But if we don't do that, then the federal project agreement would be void. And we don't foresee that happening. We don't have any reason to think that there would be issues. But we do need to get it executed in order to break ground. And so that's why we put in that goal date. So that's a process for the donation acceptance agreement. What's going to be in it? What are we giving away? So first, let's talk about those topics. So Caltrans owns the underlying land, which is over 100 acres down at the site. They are not signing all of that away to the federal government. Instead, they're going to be conveying only the land that's under the actual federal facilities that SANDAG's going to build, plus some additional land for things like a vault and a firing range. SANDAG, for our part, we're planning to convey the port of entry facilities themselves that are for the federal government on top of the land, as well as those commencement of operation contributions. And this conveyance, it's going to happen at a term we call beneficial occupancy, which the lawyers talked about for a long time. In layman's terms, it means when the port of entry is ready to be used and everything but punch list is done. So that's the conveyance and the donation acceptance agreement. Let's talk a little bit about staffing and operations. So under the federal project agreement, CBP notes its intention to staff the port of entry 365 days a year, 16 hours a day. They've also agreed to go ask the federal government for annual appropriations for staffing. But CBP's biggest concern, obviously, is security, and they retain ultimate control over the hours and operation of the port of entry. One of the other things I'd like to note is that SANDAG's projected contributions for the port of entry's operation and maintenance may be insufficient in the first half of the agreement, which all the parties are aware of. And GSA and CBP may need to seek federal annual appropriations to support that operation and maintenance for the port of entry. One of the other things I'd like to talk about is the idea that we're gifting this to them. So the gift of the port of entry, the residual toll revenue, that's all a gift. And the big rule of making any gift to the federal government is that it needs to come without strings. It needs to be unconditional. And so there are upsides and downsides to that. What that means to this project is the federal government is not liable to us if they don't operate the facility. So that could happen for different reasons. Appropriations aren't sufficient. Maybe residual toll revenue is less than we think. Maybe CBP determines that it's in the best interest of their operations to change operations. So that's the downside. The upside of this structure, though, is that SANDAG is also not liable to GSA and CBP for things like failing to deliver the port of entry, if that were to happen, or if toll revenues are less than expected. There are several other terms, and I don't want to bore the board, but I'll just talk about them briefly. There will be an Otay Mesa East Corridor Working Group that's going to be made up of representatives from each party that can make recommendations to their governing body about how residual toll revenues would be used. I want to emphasize SANDAG retains ultimate control over SANDAG's portion of the revenues. The agreement could be terminated if all the parties agree in writing, or if one party materially breaches the agreement and doesn't cure. The agreement does provide for future phasing. Does provide that it can be amended if we decide to phase the project. For example, if we open to commercial vehicles first and then open to passenger vehicles. And that's a part of the resolution that would permit the agreement to be amended if we decide to phase. Any disputes that we have, we'll try to work them out, but nothing prevents us from going to court. It would be governed by federal law. Some of the last terms, with any construction project, you get warranties. We're going to be providing and assigning those to GSA for the LPOE facilities. As Nikki mentioned, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is going to be provided space in the commercial vehicle enforcement facility that'll be built out. There's going to be a contribution of $500,000 to outfit them, and their O&M will be covered for the term of the agreement. We're also helping fund a GSA construction manager up to $300,000 a year to help with the port of entry facilities. So I'm going to hand it back over to Maria now to talk about next steps.
So the next step is to complete the other agreements, the DAA that Betsy described, signing the binational agreements that were approved in July by the board, signing an infra grant agreement with FHWA. This is very important to us. Upon signing the FPA, we'll be authorized by the federal government to sign a construction contract. So that allows us to do the allocation, the obligation of that grant that was at risk. What I want to remind everybody, we were very worried because the grant has to be obligated by September 2025. So with this agreement, we're finally authorized to proceed and not lose the money. So we'll come back in the summer once we have finalized the design with the CMGC team, and we already have the authorization if we sign this agreement. We'll be able to proceed to construction in October next year. This year. I can finally say this year. Sorry about that. And so we'll continue the engagement with our U.S. federal partners so that we can keep the project going and in time and accelerate as much as we can. With the CMGC, we'll be brainstorming on phasing. So we might come back soon and talk about phasing strategies, and we'll have that discussion with the federal government as well. This concludes the presentation today. Thank you.
As you could see, it's quite a thick agreement.
Pull it up.
Nutshell, I think the team went over the amounts, that they're up to those amounts, their percentages, and the non-recourse funds and the non-obligation pieces that we have, each part. Border crossings are hard to budget sometimes individually. They're all budget under the general Homeland Security budget. So the staffing will probably be coming under the entire bucket of for the nation for CBP. So they have, CBP has agreed to put in the staffing numbers in their equations for this facility for their national ask. So that's what's happening. And I think we open it up, I don't know, for questions or comments.
Yeah, well, before we go to public, this is an excellent presentation. Thank you, Betsy and Maria and Nikki. Very thorough. There's a lot of new board members, and there are those of us who aren't new, but we've been hearing about this over years in bits and pieces. So please feel free to ask questions when we get to board member comments, because we need to really understand and get our hands around this. And you really did a great job, and I know you've got slides to refer back to respond to our questions. So first we'll go to the public. Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. Our first speaker will be Alan C., followed by Robert German.
Before you start my time, point of order, are we allowed to speak on both 6A, 6B separate? Oh, okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, this.
Wait,
board,
6A and 6B together, because they're kind of together.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
just
yeah.
2 minutes. Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, yeah, I guess we'll start. This board last year approved to include the Tijuana sewage. Last year, you guys unanimous. Yet, there's nothing in here that talks about Tijuana sewage. That's very contentious what the people want results from. And yet it's not in this agreement. Why not? Jack, raise some hell. Because just a couple weeks ago, President Biden denied cleanup of the Tijuana River, Tijuana sewage, Tijuana Valley. So the feds aren't coming to help us. We got to take control. Every day our beaches are shut down, shut the border, not the people, because people need to get back to Mexico, their families, and as well as the other side. Shut the border of commerce. Do not open the gates to Otay until you pressure Mexico to fix their sewage plant. Because right now, all you guys are saying, well, let's put billions of dollars in our sewage plant. It doesn't do crap, literally. It's a holding pond of smells, mosquitoes, coming from the Mexico sewage side to our side, so you can have the most pristine, modernized sewage plant on our side. It doesn't mean nothing when you got this huge holding pond smelling up. People are suffering down in South Bay. What are you going to do for them? So please consider that Even last year when Chula Vista had the feds out for a meeting with Senator Padilla, and he said he will resolve this, we pointed out then, do something. His result a couple months later, oh, we'll just sue the American companies that have business in Mexico. Not a peep about pressure in Mexico to stop the sewage at their end. That's where we got to fix the problem. Our beaches are being shut down. Our people are suffering in South Bay. Do something. Do something now. Make that part of this agreement. My neighbor dropped sewage in his driveway. Analogy, does it mean everybody down the street pay for the sewage running down the street? It's the same thing. Put the pressure on Mexico to fix the problem at the source. I yield back.
Our next speaker will be Robert German, followed by Cesar Javier.
Right, I concur with that speaker, and we didn't collaborate on anything. The county's, what is the county's cut then? Is it has to go through SANDAG for this toll money, which I think is improper. How about an amendment or a lien on some of the toll monies to fix the cross-border sewage problem may be appropriate at this time. The prime participants are Baja California and San Diego County. Shouldn't we get that money, which could fix mutually the problem that we have on the border? I did not know that it was even mentioned before, so this is even more important to me. The coffee is earmarked for our mutual sewage problem. Baja and San Diego are sister cities. We are in this sewage problem together, and this is a perfect way to fix the problem and keep it under control and maintain it. I think it's a very reasonable, both sides might even agree to it. I don't know why they wouldn't, and if they wouldn't, then yeah, you got to play a little hardball here, because otherwise nobody else is coming up with any money. I'd like to change topics just a smidgen. The plane pass that I mentioned before is administered by Victor Airport Systems, and it's been in existence for 15 years, and it has great reviews by everybody that used it. Thank you.
Speaker will be Cesar Javier, followed by Truth.
Thank you. Young citizens, American citizens, excellent presentation. Mine is focused on the contribution of my city, our finest city of San Diego, led by, oh, where is my mayor? He is absent again. Sir Lacaba, the president of the councilors of my city. I am skeptical, doubtful. I cannot trust our leadership in its share of resource for this excellent undertaking to sustain circulation mobility in the region. One element that has to be a vital part of urbanization, meaning for decent home and suitable surroundings for human survival in the environment. How much, let's put it in the law or ordinance or rule, how much this local government would contribute. That has to be crafted. Sir Lacaba, how much would you offer on these great projects? You cannot, because the investment of the money is, hey, they hired investors to produce that maturity profit. How could Mayor Gloria implement good governance? It's only for campaign management, not for governance, because only 35% of that investment is ready to be used. Fluid. That's my earnest suggestion. Let's make a change in our ruling. Open the gate for good projects. Excellent.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be allegedly Audra, followed by Mark.
Okay. I follow the corrupt money and it led me to make this hat. Lisa and Mario, I got to tell you that that little asthma bout I had, that didn't make me laugh like you were doing while people were speaking about health impacts. On page 71, why is project funds and uses number 1 left blank? Aren't there 3 more opportunities to rework this pre-planned done deal? But there's been no change at all. What about Juan's SB 10? Is SANDAG waiting for that to be forgotten just like Imperial Beach? Is this because Newscom gave us timeline demand about it? Who cares? SANDAG is a transportation agency, not a binational trade agency. No to giving 50% of a total country consumed in corruption and ran by the cartel, whose former president said anyone who turned over cartel members to our government has committed crimes. When are those buzzwords, equity and justice, going to be addressed? When will the toxic tide, contaminated coast, pollution paradise be addressed? Did you generate a cost benefit on that? Because 10 lanes of highway traffic, more cheap labor, maquiladoras on the border, some owned by China-based communists, more development in Tijuana with more toxic sewage and dumping pollution is the direct effect of another border crossing. Is Congress going to fund CBP but not keep Border Patrol agents from getting sick from the toxic sewage? There's hundreds of billions being invested in this one project with even an area for hazardous waste storage, but zero investment or mitigation for Tijuana River diversion. When it comes to free trade fascism, the state and feds always have the money to invest. Caltrans is not complying with the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, which says, quote, "It is the responsibility of the federal government to use all practicable means to improve and coordinate federal plans, functions, programs, and resources to assure for all Americans safe, healthful surroundings, to attain beneficial uses of the environment without degradation, risk to health or safety, or other undesirable and unintended consequences. Reasonably foresee environmental effects of the proposed agency action," end quote. SANDAG and Caltrans continue to not follow the laws or protect the environment. Shame, shame on everyone.
Sorry, now we'll go to allegedly Audra and then Mark.
Oh, okay. Well, good. I'm here. Hope you guys are enjoying your sandwiches that we paid for. It'd be nice if you could share them with us, but that's okay. Anyway, it's funny to hear you talk about the border and safety and security when we have an invasion going on. And I don't know if you know, at the port, at the West Port of Entry, CBP One app individuals are crossing at astronomical rates right now. And it's interesting because there's caravans that are coming. And so they're just, flooding that way because, they have to obscure this invasion and act like it's not still happening. So I think it would behoove you to make sure that this East Port of Entry has no CBP One app, individuals that are going to be crossing. Granted, it's going to be 18 months from now. But if you think about what Mexico's doing, and they're saying that they're going to take these migrants, right, and hold them there. So imagine in 2028 when we have a different administration and they are all there for 4 years waiting to come back across the border. So I think you guys need to understand that people in Tijuana that live there and are covering this know exactly what's going on. And it's funny because you guys don't ever want to address it. You want to talk about the border and all of this, and it's like right in front of our face, we have an invasion going on that we just pretend isn't happening. And, then we have sewage problems. So it's like you're willing to engage with Mexico for business like this. But you don't give two shits about the people that are suffering in the Tijuana River Valley or the people that are suffering coming across the border. So you guys need to start getting on page and actually facing this fact and doing something about it to make sure that you're not doing business with Mexico and giving them $3.7 billion when all of these problems exist. So at what point are you going to acknowledge this? It's never happened. You've never talked about it. And it's a slap in the face to the people of San Diego when you're spending our resources to aid and abet illegal immigrants. People have crossed the border.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mark, followed by Paul the Bold.
Mark, I couldn't agree with Alan more. This is your one and maybe only chance for an awfully long time, maybe your lifetime, to use this to get our side of the border cleaned up. And I've heard members of your board speak on this and state the same thing, which I truly appreciate. And it's absolutely disgraceful that you guys haven't done something about this. And I don't hear anybody speaking up on your board. Now, also, I'm curious, how much do the contractors get in this $3.5 million deal? Just curious. You know, it's probably a reasonable amount. I know somebody has to make a good salary, but I mean, is a $500,000 a year, you know, their salary? I mean, I don't know. Or excuse me, could be $50 million a year. I don't know. I'm asking. Investment dividends are ultimately paid for by the people. So whatever your investments are, or the people that are investing in this, we're the ones paying for it, and they're making a profit. And now, if you had a friend and you said, I need a driveway built, and he said, oh, don't worry, I'm in construction, I can build your driveway. You're like, oh, wow, thanks, you're my friend. And then he's like, but I'm paying a whole bunch of my people, and I'm going to get a big cut, and we're just going to make a bunch of money off you. Would that be your friend? Well, the government is supposed to be your friend, of and by and for the people, and it's simply not. It's a corporation, it's a scam, and it makes the most ultimate amount of money possible off of all of us, off every single project. And with BlackRock investing in most of our things that the people use every day, our sewage and such. And just the toll is a hidden tax on the people. The companies are going to just raise the price on what we buy. As usual, I'm out of time, struggling at the end to think.
Our next speaker will be Paul the Bold, followed by Consuelo.
Paul Bold, section 4.2 says that the Otay Mesa land port of entry will not be initially designed to process pedestrians or those motor coaches or buses carrying passengers who are required to be processed as pedestrians. So may we assume that this will be yet another avenue for illegals to cross the border? The federal project agreement puts us too much at risk. I'm not sure what you mean in the presentation, but when you say that 20% of the project, 271 million, is to be supported by future bonds, it sounds pretty sketchy to me. You say there is a total capital need for 699 mil, but you say that the total project is 1334 million, of which only 635 million has actually been funded. The state and feds are broke, and any funding is slow or non-existent. Unwise to rely on them for most of the funding. So is a 3-year completion date even realistic? Did you look at splitting the project into types of construction or regions? If there were multiple contractors, work might not take so long when the Mexican side is basically completed. I would like to see the contract, by the way, and not a summary of what it might do if everything goes right, including contingency fees and freebies and proper amounts and signatures. Now, let's say section 6.2.4 of the contract says any design changes.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Consuelo, and Consuelo will be followed by Clarissa Falcon.
Okay, so excuse me, Consuelo here. Ditto to what all the concerned citizens said. Ellen, you're so close. No, you're actually there. See, they don't care because they don't work for the people nor the betterment of our lives here of the county, in the county. Yet people continue to put their blind faith in these fork-tongued legislators and this foul, backwards, purposely broken system. They will continue working for what the oligarchs want, yet they expect us all to continue to foot the bill and pay for what does not benefit the majority of the people. So let me get this straight. The investors will be making a chunky profit off of this. That again, we, the hardworking taxpayers, will be paying for. Got it. I just wrote, tax and govern us harder, Daddy, not. To my county neighbors, please pay attention, get involved. San Diego County taxpayers, they continue to make our lives more and more difficult while these oligarchs become more and more comfortable, cozy, and greedy. What Paul didn't get to finish was section 6.24 says any design changes have to go through a federal review process, which could take a while given the number of agencies involved. Section 6.6 says that there will be a lien on SANDAG's future revenues for various bonds and loans. Reasonable, but this means that SANDAG may not be able to fulfill a basic transportation responsibilities to this county. I do not like that most reports or other materials could simply be classified and refrained and retained at the federal level, not even released to you guys. Guess they heard about all your trust issues too. Then GSA could use their
Thank you. Your
own.
time has expired. Our next speaker will be Clarissa Falcon, followed by Alejandra Mieri-Teran.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Happy New Year and congratulations to Chair Huebner, Vice Chair LaCava, and Second Vice Chair Minto. Clarissa Falcon. I'm here today representing South County Economic Development Council. I've been a longtime member of that organization, and South County Economic Development Council has been a longtime supporter of the construction and operation of the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry. I've personally been involved in advocating and supporting this project since its inception back in the 2000s. And I just want to say that I want to thank this body for the focus and leadership to get this project to this point. As you've heard, this is a very intricate and very complicated project that we have been trying to move and progress for going on over 2 decades now. And we are looking forward to the completion and operation of the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry. It's not only an importance locally, regionally, nationally, but even internationally. And we need to move this project forward. Thank you to all of you that have supported the staff and Caltrans and your partnerships with the state, federal government to get this project to where it is now, and looking forward to continued progress of this project. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Alejandra Mieri-Teran, and Alejandra will be followed by Angel Marquez.
Thank you. Congratulations, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, board members. My name is Alejandra Mieri-Teran. I'm the Executive Director of the Otay Mesa Chamber of Commerce. I want to start by congratulating the SANDAG team and the Caltrans team for the amazing job. This has never been done. The amount of agreements and just specialized work with Mexico has just been absolutely innovative and amazing. I want to speak on behalf of the thousands of businesses, small businesses, and thousands of employees in Otay Mesa. We are in full support of the proposed action items today, the approval of the construction award, and obviously the adoption of the federal agreement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our final speaker on this item will be Angel Marquez. You can go ahead.
All right. Hello. Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Angel Marquez, and I am a field representative for U.S. Senator Alex Padilla. The senator has been very involved in pushing the federal agencies to move expeditiously ahead of the upcoming transition, and he would like to express his support for the Otay Mesa East federal project agreement. For several years, SANDAG and Caltrans have been involved in negotiations with GSA and CBP to determine all parties' responsibilities in relation to the design, construction, operation, management, and revenue sharing of the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry. This new port of entry will be critical to enhancing regional mobility, promoting economic growth, and facilitating binational trade. Since he joined the United States Senate, Senator Padilla has worked closely with all project partners at the regional, state, and federal level, and he is excited to see all parties come together on this agreement. In 2022, Senator Padilla helped secure a $150 million infra grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation for this project. And this agreement will ensure that these funds can be obligated before expiring later this year. The Senator commends the teams at SANDAG, Caltrans, GSA, and CBP who have met weekly for nearly the last 3 years to accomplish this complex and innovative agreement. He supports the advancement of this federal project agreement and the completion of the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry, and he encourages the SANDAG Board of Directors to do the same. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Very good. We're going to board member comments. Councilmember Fisher.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate that. Obviously, this is something that I've spoken to this board on many occasions. I want to really recognize how hard staff has worked. A year ago, or actually less than a year ago, I was in Washington, D.C. Representing this agency at a national conference. And at the same time, staff was in DC meeting with GSA. And I remember on the second day we met for dinner and I just was inquisitive of how things were going, and a lot of long drawn out sad faces. I felt like things were stalled at GSA. So I'm glad that we're at that point now where things are progressing. Obviously, there's a lot at stake when it comes to the finances of the financing of this, and obviously we have some timelines to hit as well. I wanted to share an email I got from one of my constituents, and I'm just going to read it. I normally don't read things, but it's important that I get the wording right. It says, now more than ever, if we want to see this project completed as planned, we need to have united regional effort with unanimous support to finish the execution of a project that has been pending since 1985. But the fact is, without the inclusion of an environmental mitigation fund added to this project, that will not be possible for the city of Imperial Beach. And I'm sure some other members will not continue to support the expansion of the economic growth within the environmental damage without addressing historical and future environmental and public health threats caused by such economic development. He says, I ask that every board member here to question if your city council or county board would vote for any project knowing its environmental and health problems that was going to be anywhere close to the disastrous situation that citizens of the South Bay not only face every day. Some may ask how the city of Imperial Beach can ask for 1% of the revenue, which I think we've documented. We've asked this board and had unanimous support of the representative people for 26,000 residents of Imperial Beach, or the over 100,000 residents impacted by outside of our city. This goes on, he says, my question to you is, how can we not oppose a project that we know will not only continue the disaster, but will increase its adverse impact in the short term and in the long term? He says, he goes on to say, I asked each member here to commit to the task of guaranteeing the proper funding allocations so that this project will not make the terrible situation even worse. And this was a letter that was sent to me not only by my constituent and good friend, Brian Bilbray, who served as the mayor of Imperial Beach from 1978 to 1983, but also as a county supervisor and as a two-term congressman. I told myself coming into this meeting today that I understand what's before this board and the approvals that are going on. And they're kind of just matter of fact, but I can't tell you that I feel any more comfortable now than I did back in May, that I felt back in September. I still feel very frustrated that we're going to continue to celebrate the economic impacts and still look at the negative impacts that are continuing. I don't know how to make this board, how to make this staff move any faster in committing to and supporting what we've already talked about over and over. I truly understand how important this project is to the region. I understand the 2 decades of hard work that's gone into it. We've aligned stars that have never been aligned. I realized after one of the last meetings that we spoke about this, that if this port of entry was being built in the manner in which every international port of entry has been built in this country, I would have zero voice. I would not be able to sit here and be frustrated and express my frustration. And to that, I owe SANDAG a great deal of respect and gratitude because of taking on such a monumental task of doing something that hasn't been done before. So I recognize those things. I still feel there's much to do. I still feel that, you know, the economic impacts, the negative ones that Imperial Beach feels, will continue. In 5 years, our visitors to Imperial Beach went from 1.9 million to 2023 being 680,000 people. If any of you who live in a beach city can understand those impacts, they're significant. We continue to have businesses closing at an alarming rate. Some businesses who are hanging on by threads. You know, we continue to be grateful for all the infrastructure funding that's being secured, but we're still 5 to 6 to 7 years out from seeing any big results. You know, the IBWC continues its failure to operate what they have now. I have some great concerns that they're going to do these improvements and not be able to operate how it is. Because once they operate, even half of what their operation can do at this point, our beaches are open. Our beaches get to be opened, which means we have tourism coming back, which means the impacts on everybody's health is lightened a little bit. We live in an environment where people continue to get sick from the air. We're documenting it. Our mayor has worked very hard to make sure that the CDC, every organization, she's working with Scripps, with other universities within the San Diego community to really make sure that we understand what's going on. I can't tell you how frustrated I am, because I know that with the increased traffic and commerce, Mexico will continue to grow. Their population will continue to grow. It was mentioned that just this operation and this port of entry opening will create 90,000 jobs on the U.S. side. I would imagine that number probably doubles or triples on the Mexico side, still without the infrastructure. So I really want to reemphasize a couple of things that I do support this project. I'm grateful for the work that has gone forward, but I really would expect leadership, not only from staff, but also from this board, to continue to commit to and follow through what we've talked about in previous things. For those of you who may be new to the board, it was a unanimous vote that this board took to support ways to find monies to mitigate and to offset the impacts in the Tijuana River Valley that we know that this new port of entry are going to create. So for that, again, I'm thankful, I'm grateful for staff and to see the progress going forward. Like I said, a year ago, I didn't know we'd be in this position. I'm grateful because it takes a lot. I know it took a lot to get there, because a year ago, that wasn't such a happy feeling for staff, but you know, I can feel the momentum going, and I would want that momentum to echo and run parallel to what the ask that Imperial Beach has made. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fisher. Appreciate those comments. Mario, did you want to follow up?
No, totally echo. We're in contact with Councilmember Fisher quite a bit. A couple of points that I just want to highlight of what we're working on. One, this board did direct us to look into this subject. We secured the grant for climate action to evaluate at the border, and it deals with any items like cross-border. So that's going to be moving forward to create kind of a border master plan. I always say to my team, if you're not in a plan, you're not going to be able to get funding in the future. So we want to work on institutionalizing that Rolodex of projects that need to happen, but also, and I think this is the important piece, right, council member, figuring out a sustainability approach on both sides of the border, because you know there's been now 2 tranches of federal funds approved for the plant on the U.S. side. The Mexicans are getting ready to put in their plant on the San Antonio Los Buenos sometime in March or April, but there needs to be that commitment that we need to keep growing responsible, and there needs to be a flow for operations and maintenance. Having said that, we're also, you know, another mile marker is State Senator Padilla put out draft Senate Bill 10, where he's talking about flexibility about the funding. So currently, and I think Betsy addressed this a little bit, the current legislation that exists for this facility mandates that only the funds can be used within the corridor. That is the legislation. But we are working with the senator on that legislation to provide flexibility, and we'll be coming to the board for direction. But he has approached us to look of how can that flexibility happen. So that has been happening also. So, you know, similar like this project has taken 2 or more decades to move, to figure out a sustainability approach for the environmental impacts on the Tijuana River or any other major subject is not something, to be quite honest, that's going to be solved overnight. It has been brewing, and then now I think with Councilmember Fisher, without putting words in your mouth, you're asking us, hey, can we be part of that solution of looking into creating that roadmap? And we are working, we are doing several mechanisms, but it is going to take a whole village to get there. And probably won't be only the Otay Mesa East project that's going to be part of the equation of the conversation of a solution. This is a broader issue that I think that border master plan for environmental impacts will be addressing, and it's going to be bringing, similar to this table, where we bring the tough subjects to discuss as a region. That plan with members of this board will be that area where we have those tough discussions and those tough commitments with all the different stakeholders. Let it be on this side of the border, let it be at the local, state, and federal level, and let it be in the mirror on the south part of the border. Those are the comments I have, and like I said, currently we're working with what Betsy mentioned in the presentation. The current legislation has the revenues in a lockbox, but we are following also the mandate you gave us. Maybe not in the speed you would like to see us, but it's a tough subject, and this MPO, this transportation agency, is getting involved in this area that is new to us, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez?
Well, you stole the words from my mouth. Councilmember Fisher, I could not express how Chula Vista joins you in this, what seems desperation. Our beaches, our constituents, and our projects, our humongous projects that we have going, we're building in the Bayfront, our tourism. It's just devastating that we haven't had the opportunity to have more funding, to find solutions, to have the federal government of Mexico get even deeply involved in a way that changes the course of what we're seeing. I am with you, representing Chula Vista, representing the constituents. We need our beaches open. We need them now. Saying that, as Mario mentioned so eloquently about how it's designated right now, the funding, it saved me a question to see how you could possibly explain this to us. And I think it was very well understood. And moving forward, first of all, I want to thank you. That explanation was incredibly well done. I'm a little biased because I started in my binational, international understanding of when this project was going, and Mexico hadn't even considered buying the land. And for many of us that understand this bilateral collaboration, and I've said it once and I say it again, we could not have a better champion for this project than the CEO that we have sitting right here. He has an incredible understanding of both sides of the border, and the Mexican government throws out the red carpet when he arrives. They listen because they know he's a well of knowledge. And this collaboration, getting CBP to this point when they are overwhelmed right now. they are overwhelmed, and I'm gonna say it, is just to show how much effort and thought and hard work went into this. We need to be mindful about those 90,000 people, almost 100,000 people that cross the border legally daily to work here in San Diego. That because we don't have enough housing, they have to live in Baja. And we need to be mindful about the $60 billion of international trade as well. We need to be mindful that having cars sit in a 3-hour, 4-hour border crossing contributes in an incredible way to our carbon emissions. I've missed Jack Shue. Where is he? Tons and tons per minute, per hour. We need to be mindful that this project is well thought of. I have to thank Alejandra Mier-Teran, that's representing the O-type businesses, and Clarissa Falcon, and everyone that took the time to come and mention how vital it is for us to find solutions. I mean, I would love to also see the 125 included. I understand the process because we're talking about carbon emissions. We're talking about holistic solutions, regional solutions. I would love to see how we can provide more housing to help the unsheltered. There's a lot we can tap into. And moving forward, I think it's the responsibility of this board with our dream team that I'm very happy we elected today. The responsibility of this board, of these representatives today here, to keep these solutions pinned to the floor here and on this table, and say we are going back because the constituents deserve adequate representation. And I am here for Imperial Beach because what affects Imperial Beach affects the constituents of Chula Vista. And we need to be mindful that we cannot take this off the table. I appreciate this presentation, but there's many, many solutions, regional solutions that were presented on this, I want to say dais, right? On this table, but also that moving forward, we need to comprehend how we're gonna not ignore these issues moving forward, these dire issues. This money, and there's a representative from the Consul General of Mexico that I saw in one of the, are you there? There you are. And I know that they're having these discussions of how they're talking about bringing it back to the Mexican border, how the funding, we can't ask this from them, but I know they're already mindful that this funding may help the border crossers, may help the holistic solutions we're talking about. And only in these discussions and only bringing this forward and only keeping a pin on it and coming back and back and back to it, we're gonna make a change. So I appreciate everyone that voices their concern because this is what it's about. Having this representation, having these solutions and making real changes. It's a lot of money, yes, but we just have to work around the laws and the procedures and make it happen. And I know that when this dream team, including our CEO that really knows both sides of the government, and most importantly, that they know him, we're gonna make it happen. Thank you so much for the presentation today. You did an excellent job.
Thank you, Carolina. Councilmember Molina.
Thank you very much, Chair and Vice Chairs. Congratulations. Miss Maria, Miss Maria Rodriguez Molina, no relation. I wanted to thank you and your team. I heard you say that you worked through the holidays to get to the point where we are now, and none of this is easy. And I do appreciate all of the work that has gone into this. At the very beginning of your presentation, you mentioned something regarding an exception of CBP personnel funding, and I didn't quite get sort of come to understand what that meant throughout the presentation. Thank you, Mario. Near the end, there was some talk about CBP and having to staff 365 days per year. Biggest concern is security. I understand all of that. And of course, I know that CBP was one of the big barriers that had, or big hurdles that had to be jumped over in order to get to this point. And I'm curious about some more details around that. Where is the funding coming from for the CBP personnel? And do we have an idea of how many CBP officers will be taking care of the security at our new border crossing? Thank you.
Yes. I was talking about the concept of revenue neutrality. What made this deal so complex and the deal then converted into an agreement was trying to make revenue neutral for everyone. So we wanted a self-sustainable project. With the tolls, we pay all of the needs of the project. Part of the construction, because we were only able to get as much as we could through the grants. And the other part is for operations and maintenance. What we were not able to cover, and we were discussing this for over a year with CBP, was the staffing. So it's revenue neutral overall for 40 years, with the exception of the staffing. The staffing costs about $100 million per year, and it's around somewhere between 350 and 400 employees for CBP. They're very rough draft numbers that we received a while back. But I think I want to pass it to Peter Peiser to explain how CBP goes about getting the staffing.
Thanks, everybody. I'll speak up. I'm Peter Peiser with Peiser Associates. For the board members I have not met, I represent SANDAG in Washington, D.C., and have done so for almost 20 years. It feels like most of that time's been working on this project. So the staffing resources are appropriated to CBP each year on a year-by-year basis in appropriation bills enacted by Congress. So what this agreement reflects is the fact that CBP in its plans will adequately staff to open this facility 365 days a year, 16 hours a day. But as with any agreement the federal government signs on a multi-year basis on any project, whether it's a transportation project, a housing project, or whatever, there's always that language that says the federal contribution is subject to annual appropriations. So that's the nature of the beast when you deal with the federal government. They can't commit on a multi-year basis. So that's what this agreement reflects, that reality that is a part of really every multi-year agreement with the federal government. The major improvement in here over what CBP policy was for quite some time on this project is that they did agree in this agreement that they would cover staffing and not require that the project finance the staffing along with all of the other elements. So it was a very significant policy change that I think demonstrates their commitment to it, but their ability to commit beyond each year's appropriated amount is limited by federal law. So that's really why you see those references in the agreement. I want to add, CBP has around 60,000 employees nationwide. They were contemplating around 350 for this facility, and the team can correct me, 250 to 350, let's say. But one thing that was very critical in the negotiations, both for us and for CBP, is that that number is not pulled from other ports of entry, that it will be an augmentation, because the last thing that we want is have a new port of entry that's charging tolls, and then the move personnel from San Isidro or Otay or Calexico, and then you're creating a queue on the other border crossings. So the idea was to augment, and that's part of the negotiations, and that's what they agreed to include in their staffing request, that augmentation for this port of entry.
Thank you. Second Vice Chair Minto.
Thank you. I have a question to ask. Can I call Truth back up for just a moment? Just to answer one question. Because I wanted to make sure I got what you said correctly.
I got my notes.
Okay. Did you, were you talking about the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969?
That's correct.
Okay, great.
it?
That's like, I got it then. Wasn't sure I heard it correctly. So, I think I was thinking about the same thing when I was reading through this about where was the information regarding the sewage and waste and all, excuse me, and all that kind of stuff. Because I know we talked about it, and I think it was Councilmember McKay that, did you author the resolution in Imperial Beach? Brought that forward, and I know we had a lot of discussion about it. And so I just wanted to, and you really kind of addressed it, is that it's going to kind of go down another road there with more specific, infrastructure, so to speak. And so I appreciate that. So that's the question. Now, here's what I had a question about NEPA though, because every project that is done where the federal government or a piece of land that could be considered near federal property requires a NEQA, just like environmental impact report, just like we do at the state. Now, but here's the thing that I have never thought of before, is that every time we do a project, and I don't know if anybody really has the answer to this question, we always have to address and identify those factors that affect everything from, transportation to environment that a project is going to do. Is there anything in there that requires us to consider if we don't do a project, what the impacts are going to be? Does that make sense? How I'm saying that's kind of like the opposite of. what we
It's the
normally do.
no-build alternative, and it does get analyzed. This project had a NEPA and a CEQA analysis and a final environmental document in 2012. It gets updated every year or every 2 years, Nikki? Every 2 years, it gets updated, and it brings up, it gets refreshed with all the current numbers. Federal Highways Administration is the NEPA lead, that on that specific. Even so, Caltrans has delegation on that specific project. The federal government wanted directly be the one approving it under NEPA, and Caltrans approved the CEQA. So that there was an analysis. As the team in their presentation mentioned, there was a mitigation bank, multiple mitigation banks that were created or areas that were acquired for the footprint of the project and the highway, because it was the environmental document was cleared the entire corridor, which is the highway, connectors, the port of entry at its ultimate site, 120 acres with the commercial vehicle enforcement facility, as well as a future transit facility.
Okay, so it's not really close enough, or there's not enough at Nexus, is there, to actually to dedicate money from the tolls to go towards the waste issues that we have down there and things?
Two things. One, current legislation was set up that all the revenues in this facility can only be spent within the footprint of the corridor that was clear environmentally. The highway, the port of entry, and the ancillary facilities like the waste station and, let's say, the future transit facility.
What legislation is that?
It was, you want to talk about
We
that
see
one?
it, like, we hear these things, but we talked about this before. We had this stuff before us, and what happened? That wasn't clear to me.
Mayor
We just
Duncan.
say words like we have legislation, and
Duncan.
other speakers say, okay, yeah, okay, we have this legislation, we can't do it.
So who will speak to that? Is that Peter Pizer?
It's Senate Bill, it was, the first part was Senate Bill 1486, and it's called the Otay Mesa Toll Facilities Act that changed the vehicle code, or what was it, Betsy?
Are you talking about what we can use the toll
The
revenues?
the enabling legislation.
Yeah, in 2008, it was the DeShaney legislation. So, but yes, are you talking about what they're permitted to use the toll revenues for?
Yes.
Yeah.
It has it in the presentation, slide 13, and it mentions the different, can we
see
put it
this?
up there?
Do you want to pull up slide 13?
Is this a different legal basis than we had when we reviewed the legal potential issues? Because we never had any conclusions on those. We said, here's some potential issues, and they were kind of very generalized when we looked at this last time. These are conclusions, right?
We can share the legislation where it was basically limiting the use of the funds within the corridor.
Right, we had a whole legal presentation of legal issues related to this project, and that was not mentioned.
So
We went over
that-
specific, like you were just saying, Betsy, about what the tolls can be used for. Is this what you're going to refer to as the basis to your answer?
Yes.
Oh, sure. I think what's going on is Mario's referring to the Senate bill, and when we gave the presentation, that referred to the area in the California Streets and Highways Code where that actually is presented. I can give you the citation to that if it'd be helpful.
Can I continue for a minute, Chair?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to point out the time. So we're hoping to get out of here at 1:30. So this is important.
Right, I'm not
Let's make
having
it
long,
concise.
general, holistic statements about good feelings and patting ourselves on the back and, all these other
get right to the
concepts.
point, Mayor.
of-
We'll
I'm,
be
I'm trying to get
thrilled.
to the actual work.
Let's do it.
So when we discuss this, and actually, when we vote on something like this, I think we should have the information in front of us. When we discussed this, we went over the legal basis and the prohibition potentially on setting aside some of the toll for mitigation of the Tijuana River Valley contamination and of the sewage spills. There was a back and forth about, well, there is some state legislation that says, tolls collected can only be used for certain things. Are the tolls being collected in California?
Yes. So there'll be toll readers that are outside, but the toll collection, we're moving to a completely electronic. So that collection will happen on the US side.
So the toll readers are in Mexico?
Yes. Some of the primary toll readers.
So you're saying there are primary toll readers in California as well?
Redundant toll readers will be on the US side.
Okay, so there are no primary on the US side. So didn't we have a discussion that the primary toll readers were on the Mexico side to potentially alleviate some legal concerns regarding how the toll revenue can be allocated?
It allows more flexibility in the use of those toll revenues under Title 23 of the US Code.
So more flexibility in the usage of those tolls is just like sort of a vague concept. I mean, I understand more flexibility, but what does that mean?
Sure.
Why did we do it? What are we doing? And what does it allow us to do or not do is if those primary toll readers were in the US?
Sure. So FHWA regulations require that if you collect a toll on the actual footprint of a federally funded highway, which State Route 11 is, that there are certain restrictions in how you can use that toll revenue. And it would limit our usage of that potentially to share it with Mexico, also potentially to support the federal government in its port of entry. And so FHWA agreed, we signed a memorandum of agreement, it's probably 6 months ago, that this new system, going to a completely electronic tolling system, moving the primary readers to Mexico, that with those changes, that the tolls collected from the primary readers would not be subject to those limitations. So they could be shared with Mexico and also help support the federal facilities.
Okay, and that was my exact understanding of what we had talked about, and that was still my understanding today before I asked the question. The basis for my question, though, is why doesn't that apply to potentially sharing or using some of the tolls for mitigation in the Tijuana River Valley?
Yeah, so good question. There are different laws. The one that we are dealing with by movement of the toll readers is federal law. And so the state law, which I got the citation, it's in the California Streets and Highways Code 31475.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the law, but go ahead.
That state law is what limits our usage of toll revenue to the list of enumerated items there. And in state law, we are permitted to use the toll revenues to fund the federal government's facilities, support their operation and maintenance, and so forth.
And does that state law talk about toll revenue collected from Mexico, toll collectors in Mexico? I don't believe it does.
So the way we've had attorneys review this, and I'm happy to have Victor Shu, who I know is available online, speak to this. They have looked at it and they believe that it complies with the state law as well as the federal law. It's had a lot of people's
So
eyes
that's
on
the
it.
reverse of what I'm asking. I believe you're correct. I believe what we've set up likely does comply as you're set forth. That's not telling me why it wouldn't also comply if some of the tolls that were collected, $1 per car, whatever it is, were allocated to the Tijuana River Valley.
Sure.
What
and
is the legal prohibition of that? I've never seen one thing in writing. I've seen general conclusory statements as we push this project through, which will 100% increase the amount of sewage that comes across the border and contaminates Imperial Beach and Coronado.
So that statute 31475, which is what the Toll Facility Act, Senate Bill 1486, puts into effect, it enumerates all the things that we can use the toll revenues for. And currently it does not include the item that you're talking about. I think that this is one thing that maybe Senate Bill 10 addresses. And so I think Senate Bill 10 is looking at adding an additional item that toll revenue could be used to, I think, address this issue you're discussing.
So that Senate bill you're referring to says that we can give money to CPB?
Currently, under the current legislation, we are allowed to support the federal agencies and their operations, their maintenance, their staffing. It's a very long list.
So again, now I'm confused. Why are we moving? Why are the toll readers, what is the toll readers in Mexico avoiding that we under California law that would otherwise be subject
It's
to?
actually not California law. It's the federal Title 23 Federal Highways Administration regulations that addresses.
Let me ask you another question. So with the potential SB 10 or the bill that may go through that would change the state laws that we're talking about, if we approve this contract and it's signed, how would that change in state law have any positive effect whatsoever for the situation of trying to obtain funds?
So the way that, and I'm going to get a little lawyerly here, so bear with me, but the way that applicable law is written within the agreement, it's the law as it is today or the law that is as it's amended. And so we need SANDAG for its portion of the toll revenues needs to use our portion of the toll revenue in accordance with state law. So for example, if the statute 31475 is amended to add an additional item, then toll revenues in the future, that would be one other item that could be used as long as those revenues aren't spoken for. So obviously our bondholders have a right to.
Yeah, the other piece is if you saw the waterfall, there is a projection of additional residual revenues that will be prelude for the SANDAG board to decide what to do. With that legislation moving forward, it would further empower the board to decide what to do with the residuals.
So are those residuals, do you remember what year those start?
I don't have them here. Maria, do you have?
If you want to pull up slide 30, it's a hidden slide. It shows the toll revenue.
And I don't know if you're going to call me again or if not, but I just have 30 seconds of finishing comments either now or later. So again, and I've said this before, and I'll be brief about it, but in my opinion, and I'm interested if anybody disagrees with it or tells me a different answer, SANDAG is never done one single thing to help with the Tijuana River Valley pollution, one of the largest environmental disasters in U.S. history, and certainly in the Southern California, area, the region. In this same region, we're one of the largest, most powerful bodies with one of the largest budgets. We constantly do projects that do increase the amount of contamination. My understanding of when we were pushing through that it was that every project we did, we would take a look at the environmental impact, not in the footprint of the project, but specifically the environmental impact on the sewage issue at the border. I think we have failed. I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, we've been doing this project for 20 years, and now we're looking at environmental stuff, and it's, it doesn't happen overnight. But this sewage issue has been going on for those same 20 years. We've had the same contamination plaguing the citizens down there. And I just think we definitely can do better and do something. I don't know if it's up to, well, I have to think of it up or Jack has to think it up, but this agency with, $1.5, $2 billion a year dealing with infrastructure seems that at some point should do one thing or something that actually helps this massive contamination. I mean, we're looking at, hey, let's do this, it helps the community, all these things. To me, we are failing. It's not acceptable. We can definitely do better. My focus in the last year, my 4 trips to DC was funding for the sewage plants. Oh, no, I'm almost done, sorry, 10 seconds. And now my focus for advocacy, and I'm going to DC next week, shall change to things at the border that this administration will consider doing. And it's unfortunate, but I'm not aware of any plan to clean up the contamination in the Tijuana River Valley. Finally, just last thing I'll say about Mexico, and I didn't know the General Consul's rep was here. I really hope that plant goes online in March, right? That plant was told, I went down and inspected it when it was being built. I saw it after it was built. We were told specifically, including at that visit, that it would be online at the end of October. Then it was kicked out. Well, it's done, but we need certain equipment. It's going to be on. If it's not online this spring, Imperial Beach's beaches will 100% be closed for, as they have been for all but 2 weeks in the last 3.5 years. And Coronado's will be closed all summer as well. That plant must come online, and there should be pressure on Mexico. I am not anti-Mexico. I am pro-trade. I am pro-commerce. I love the country, but we definitely have to have pressure on Mexico. And I think there is a perception in the public sometimes that this agency that we're sitting at is a United States Mexican agency. This SANDAG is not part of the country of Mexico or a Mexican agency. This is the San Diego Association of Governments, and that is who our citizens need to know that we are mostly focused on, that we are 100% focused on, frankly. I mean, I even had somebody ask me today, why is the Mexican flag flying behind our chair? Why is the United States flag not in compliance with the code for flying it? It's not in the center, and it's on a lower staff than all the other 3 flags. Why? I mean, I'm not anti-Mexico by any means, and I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm pro having a great relationship and pro that country, but people do have a perception. Like, why is the Mexican flag flying here right now? Is this why? It's just a question that I was asked. I didn't have an answer.
So the money that was the discretionary money at the very end, I don't know if that's the right word, discretionary. Are we seeing this slide that is all the way in 2060 something?
I want to highlight, these are just draft projections, right? And they're conservative because they're meant to be the foundation to get bonds. We might be in the situation that there is additional funding through the tolls. That's possible. And if that happens, that bucket for SANDAG might be larger. And if another Senate bill passes that addresses the limitations that we currently have, the board will have discretion to use the funding, but this is just a draft right now. We're living within our means. CBP GSA will not be getting their operations fully funded the first 21 years. We'll catch up to those in the later years. But again, just a projection and very conservative.
So I don't think there's a member around this table that does not feel for the issues that have been brought up, and that we would like to see something that could be done. And if we could, I don't know what that would be. I mean, if it's just making a resolution that we say that money, if it comes, will be put toward, cleaning up of the Tijuana River Valley, or if there's some other nexus that we could find, if it's some legislation that we could get. SB 10. So we're working with State Senator Padilla on SB 10, and to get more flexibility with those with our funds, so that we could then that we could then contribute money to fix this situation and ASAP, and not all the way out to 2060 something.
Chair, maybe the 3 of us can get together and talk about how we can dig a little bit deeper into the weeds on this, and bring information out that's going to satisfy the board, and also help to answer the questions for the people that are asking it in the audience.
Yeah, great idea. We'll get that done. Okay, Mayor Gasterlin, and then we have Mayor Snow. And then don't forget, we need a motion in a second.
Thank you. So I do want to say Del Mar stands with Imperial Beach, Coronado, Chula Vista on this issue. Why? because there are no firewalls in our water. We know from Scripps coastal oceanographers that the overall flow from north to south is an overall flow, but there's backflow and there's onshore, offshore flow as well. All of our beaches, including Encinitas, Carlsbad, and Oceanside, are at risk, and we don't know what the future holds. I want to read the title of an article that a colleague of mine at Scripps, she's an aerosol chemist, is about to have published in Science. And if you do a search on this article, you can bring it up and you can read what numbers were measured. The title is Heavily Polluted Tijuana River Drives Regional Air Quality Crisis. The lead scientist on this is Kimberly Prather, my colleague at UCSD. And I want to read 2 sentences. High wastewater flows and low winds led to nighttime hydrogen sulfide peaks, reaching 4,500 parts per billion, exceeding typical urban levels of 1 part per billion. Kim's team measured this, and they packaged it all together, and they also correlated, so they tracked these levels and peaks with frequency of malodors. And the malodors, as she has put it, is hydrogen sulfide levels and community malodor reports were strongly correlated. There's a correlation number, R equals 0.92. 1 is perfect correlation. 0.92 is nearly so. This validated long dismissed community voices. And I know from sitting right here next to my colleague, Jack Fisher from Imperial Beach for 2 years now, that Jack's voice has been dismissed even by the SANDAG board in the past. And this highlights an environmental injustice issue. So I invite people to read that. That brings me to my questions, and I'm concerned about the environmental adverse impacts of increased capacity flowing through Otay Mesa East. What will those impacts be? So I'd like to make sure, so when your group meets, let's ask for, what do we know about the environmental impacts of increased capacity at Otay Mesa East? Is that going to be a diversion of traffic from other ports of entry, or will it be increasing activity and populations in Tijuana? So let's include that. And I'll pose one more question. Is 16 hours a day enough? If trucks are in line at the end of the 16th hour, what will happen? Are they going to have to camp out and wait until dawn until they can cross? Or is there a mechanism set up? Have people thought this through, or will there be a mechanism set up? And I want to end my comment, and I don't need that answer right now. Unless this gets built, there will be no revenues. Thus, I'll make the motion. The motion is that this board of directors authorize the chief executive officer to award the pre-construction contract not to exceed 3.5 million, and that we adopt resolution number 2025-09 as written here.
So that's a motion. May I have a second? Dillard, second. Thank you very much. That is exactly right. If we don't get this signed, we don't get any solutions in the future. Very good. Okay, Mayor Snow.
One idea, I also stand in support with the request for improvements regarding the Tijuana sewage situation. Is it possible for us, if we have limitations on funding and heaven forbid SB 10 doesn't pass, for us to increase the percentage of the revenues that are going to Mexico and have Mexico use that money to build it, since they don't have similar funding restrictions that we have?
The percentage we have set up with Mexico and what we have brought up to Mexico is that based on that, what I mentioned, the quality of life and the climate action plan, that they should be using some of those funds from their revenues to grow with responsibility and mitigate environmental impacts. The government of Baja has been receptive to those conversations, and they have requested, nothing's in writing, right? But we brought it up, and they have requested in writing to the federal Mexican government to be the recipients of the percentages on their side. And then in spirit as we're working, and we would work eventually for an MOU where they start committing those funds to do infrastructure and continue maintenance on their side.
So my,
So
my
those are
question-
negotiations that are
yeah,
happening.
My question goes beyond that. Can we give, if we can't, because we have an obligation to help too. We've created some of this problem, right? So can we give our money that we would have normally received under the current plan of 50-50? We do 40-60, give them 10%, but say that it has to be used towards that. So we are also buying into this. I understand that we're saying, we want you to use this money to fix the problem that you created on your side. But if we can't do it the way we have now, is this a possible alternative? And can we explore that?
I think it's something that can be explored. The board is the toll authority. The board is the one who decides what to do with the toll revenues within any legislation boundary that they have. You know, that is something that can be discussed. I don't have the solid answer for you here.
Right, yeah. Thank you.
Very good. All right. I think, no, are you complete? Yeah. I see no more people wishing to speak, so I will now call for the vote.
That motion does pass with the 10 yeses and 2 nos and 7 absences.
Very good. All right. Now let's go to continued non-agenda public comments.
Thank you, Chair. For continued non-agenda public comment, we'll start with Truth and then go to allegedly Audra.
But the bathrooms.
Okay, so did NEPA and CEQA only study car emissions? Is that the problem? And Lisa, if you were worried about the meeting end time, why didn't you start at 9 a.m.? Hello. Congrats, Joe. I advocated for you for a year. But what a disgusting political theater sideshow that selection process was, very similar to the national selection. And for the record, I knew Nora was on her way out months ago, and I was 100% sure after her last SANDAG. She waited until after the election so Glisa would be handed the seat. And everybody knows Nora did not leave for security concerns. Both she and Tara have more personal security than a bank. Tara's cost the county $45,000 so far. And this is not an endorsement, but I want to thank Carolina for informing everyone of public transit riders' #1 priority and concern, safety. And adding to that, the blue line that Luz occasionally rides is not the same experience as relying solely on public transit. The blue line is probably the safest trolley line because it's the most used. When there are gaps in ridership on the green or the orange lines with no security around, bad things happen. However, just yesterday, a woman was stabbed at the blue line at America Plaza. There's your safety. It's time to get with reality and support a Vision Zero for public transit. And as a reminder for Lisa and anyone else on a nightmare team suffering from delusions of grandeur or totalitarianism, from the case in Ray K, quote, the very possibility of adverse reaction may aid in the correction of evils which would otherwise escape opposition. Free speech may indeed best serve its high purpose when it induces a condition of unrest, creates dissatisfaction with conditions as they are, or even stirs people to anger. Speech is often provocative and challenging. It may strike at prejudice and preconceptions and have profound, unsettling effects as it presses for acceptance of an idea, end quote. So we don't have to agree or like what is said or how it's said, but it's the right of everyone to speak freely. And for the record, the elevators were locked again, but this time Melanie, Carolina, Bill, and Robin Joy got to join the locked out club. And I have to give a shout out to Coronado J. Dunn because I always forget that great city. Sorry about that.
Our next speaker will be allegedly Audra, followed by Consuelo.
Almost forgot there was public comment still. It's crazy sitting in these meetings. It's interesting. I would like to suggest that you don't trail the public comment till the end of the meeting, because as you can see, nobody's here. And I think it's important that you don't disenfranchise the people by making them wait. until the end of the meeting to do this? What if somebody actually had somewhere to go and they thought they were going to be able to come here and have their voice be heard? Instead, they have to wait hours just to have that be heard. So I think that as you're being generous with the 2 minutes, that you could potentially revisit that and see if that's something that you will fix, because I think it's important for the people to not have to, I mean, you guys are being paid to be here. All of us aren't. And so I think you should have more respect for the people in that manner. And as well, if we're going to be paying for you guys to have lunch, we have to sit and watch you eat it while we have paid for it. I think for equity, you should do that for all the people, especially if we're paying for it. I mean, how much more is it going to cost for you to feed everybody in the audience here while you guys could go back probably a couple of times if you wanted? So I think that you need to be more mindful of the things that you guys do to the people. It's rude. Yeah. And kind of disrespectful, because it's like, I mean, you guys are paying for it, but you just get to watch us eat. It's nice, right? It's good. So please revisit that and think about not trailing this to the end, and looking into how much would it cost to feed us as well as you guys. I mean, we get tea and coffee. That's nice. It's very sweet. But I think that out of, you know, not being rude to the people, either you don't eat now and you can wait until you're done working, or you can share it with the people that are actually funding it. So have a good day. Happy 2025. And let's hope that Trump doesn't come after each and every one of you for aiding and abetting, but we'll see what happens.
Our next speaker will be Consuelo, followed by Paul the Bold.
Okay, Consuelo here. Ditto to what everything that previous speakers just said. So I wanted to show this video. I wanted to show it at the Board of Supervisors, but I will have the chance to show it here, and hopefully you all, I'd like to share it with you, and hopefully you all will try and, well, whatever. Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on, sorry. Shit. Wait. Okay.
Why humanity?
Wait, sorry. How much I got?
The average person who goes to school has no idea why humanity exists. He has no idea concerning a spiritual factor of material existence. He has no general comprehension of the rules of life as these differ from the rules of social and political structures. He does not know where he came from. He does not know why he is here, and he has no idea where he's going. And now this compound ignorance, we offer degrees and make brilliant scholars of the people who have never answered any of those questions. It is one of these amazing things that we have created a great hierarchy of well-lettered ignorance. We have made everything subservient, not to wisdom, but to the passing advantages of the hour. We're in exactly this position politically today. The average.
Okay, so with that being said, I wanted to remind the people that my San Diego neighbors, they control the governments, they control the food supply, they control Big Pharma, they control the weather. What's it going to take for the good people of the planet, of my county, to stand up against these globalists who are currently in control? It will be okay, but only when we rise up against the ones creating all of this chaos. Enough with waiting on safety.
Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Paul the Bold, followed by Angelina Neglia.
Jack Shu, most of you or all of you remember him, once called us a cash poor agency. You need to focus on your mission, which is transportation, like fire escape routes in East County or moving the train tracks. Starting grants as I did to route the train tracks up the I-15 corridor makes sense. Not only would it save a lot of time, effort, lives maybe, and dollars, it would be a far easier connection to the fast trains to Las Vegas and SF to LA. And they'd be ready a lot sooner than 2035. The parking lot inside the Del Mar Fair is so cracked that suggests major soil instability, which means that a tunnel track there or anywhere near the ocean probably won't work. There are too many erosion spots and choke points throughout the lost sand tracks up the I-5 corridor. Erosion from the ocean, landslides from the steep cliffs. I mean, like they go from San Clemente to OB and south. Please think about the long term. East County now has a representative of SANDAG, but no vote. The reeks of corruption. The sales tax would have been taxation without representation. I also note the focus of SANDAG seems to be on BESS EVs. And may I note that
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our final speaker on this item will be Angelina Neglia. You can go ahead when you're ready.
And melt metal.
I will go. Okay, and I'm Angelina Neglia, and I represent the Coalition for Safer Trains. I have given you all the PowerPoint last night and the appendix that go with it. So there's a lot to learn regarding the Lausanne Railroad through Del Mar. We're engaged with our grassroots rail activist groups all the way from Oceanside to San Diego, including all tax-paying citizens that have reached out to us in that section of the railroad. We all agree the tracks have to come off the bluff. And as the previous speakers even said, the bluffs are eroding and the Del Mar bluffs and the hillside where people live are made of the same soft Tory soil. We are asking that the value analysis, which was just done by SANDAG, which promised community input, we actually weren't allowed or weren't given the opportunity. We ask that the realignment routes that should circumvent the city and also take into consideration the safety of the citizens, not just the rail safety. And know that 35 to 50 homes would be taken by eminent domain, more pollution because tripling the number of trains and all the documented health reasons with putting a portal and a tunnel right next to homes. There would be 27 homes that would be having tunnels under them, which is the entire length of Del Mar. No city should have to stand for this disproportionate destruction. So SANDAG has offered only one such route in the NOP, which would be an I-5 alignment. We're asking for the Value Analysis Committee to meet with the public and give us the opportunity to provide input before SANDAG does any vote. They promised community input and nothing has happened yet. And we fear that the December 20th internal meeting that SANDAG had, where you winnowed down the alignments without community input, once again, will just hand this huge document to the board.
Thank you. Your time has expired. I did want to give Purita an opportunity to speak. She missed her call at the top of the meeting, but she's been here waiting.
Hi, Joe.
Thank you, SANDAG. But the mayor of City of San Diego is absent.
Good morning. I am Rita Javier, victim of toxicity in the residential zone community. Here is my doctor's opinion on health impact. Note, we never heard for 3 years opinion from Mayor Gloria and Councilor La Cava. Request step down allowing capable public servants. My patient Purita Javier requesting my documentation to regard to how her surrounding environment affect her health. She continued to have significant anxiety in regards to the possible health effects related to air quality around her home. Her neighbors have a kiln, the use of which may have contributed to adverse symptoms, if not to her health, physically, then psychologically. Scoring from depressions via the WHO, that's 9, moderate anxiety range. She lives in fear in her own home and avoids being outside.
Thank you very much. Your time has expired. Thank you. Your time has expired. And that concludes the public commenters.
Thank you so much. This concludes our meeting. The next Board of Directors meeting will be January 24th at 9 a.m. We are adjourned.